Former Vice President Mike Pence is signaling that he will resist a grand jury subpoena for his testimony about the assault on the U.S. Capitol. NPR's Carrie Johnson reports Pence is expected to claim he is protected by legislative privilege.
The former vice president recently received a subpoena from special counsel Jack Smith, who's investigating the siege on the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Prosecutors appear to want Pence to discuss the pressure former President Donald Trump put on him in the weeks before that day. But a source familiar with Pence's thinking says Pence may claim he's protected by legal privilege that shields congressional officials from testifying about their work. Pence presided over the U.S. Senate while he served as vice president. Pence's likely decision, first reported by Politico, could set up a long legal fight with the special counsel and delay any ultimate decision on the fate of Trump, who's running for president. Carrie Johnson, NPR News, Washington.
Former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador Nikki Haley is running for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024. She'll be campaigning against her old boss, former President Donald Trump. And Haley says it's time for the GOP to reach out to a new generation of voters.
Republicans have lost the popular vote in 7 out of the last 8 presidential elections. That has to change.
Haley announced her news this morning on social media. The Labor Department says inflation declined in January, but only modestly. The Consumer Price Index ran at an annual rate of 6.4% last month. That's a slightly smaller jump than the 6.5% annual inflation rate reported in December. Prices rose 0.5% last month, mostly because of higher costs for shelter, food, and gasoline. On Wall Street, stocks are lower. The Dow is down more than 200 points. The Nasdaq is down more than 20. You're listening to NPR News.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline today. The New Hampshire Supreme Court is hearing an appeal from Pamela Smart today. As New Hampshire Public Radio's Todd Bookman reports, Smart was convicted in 1991 for orchestrating the death of her husband in a case that gained national attention.
Her own attorney describes her as perhaps the most notable criminal defendant in New Hampshire history. Pam Smart is serving a life sentence without parole for her role in the death of her husband, Greg, who was killed by 4 teenagers at Pam's direction more than 30 years ago. She's filed numerous appeals. The latest went before the Governor and Executive Council last August. But rather than granting her a commutation hearing so that she could attempt to make the case she's fit enough to be released, the council rejected the petition. Smart is appealing, claiming that under the Constitution, she's entitled to at least a formal hearing. Lawyers for the state reject that argument. For the New England News Collaborative, I'm Todd Bookman.
Massachusetts no longer experiencing drought conditions. The state says we now have had 5 months of normal to above normal precipitation. That means all 7 regions of the state are at normal conditions. The Islands region was previously at level 2 or significant drought. The Cape region had been at level 1 or mild drought before the rainy period, and the month of January brought above normal rainfall across all regions of the Commonwealth, helping with the recovery of groundwater streams and lakes. No snow, though. In sports, Celtics in Milwaukee tonight. The Bruins are in Dallas, and Northeastern looks to make it a twofer, a beanpot twofer, when the Huskies women's hockey team takes on BC. The men won last night. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Doris Duke Foundation, which aims to support the well-being of people and the planet for a more creative, equitable, and sustainable future. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Houston Rowdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library as we do every Tuesday and every Friday. And we are also streaming online at YouTube. What's the website, Jim?
YouTube.com/GBH News.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Hello to you.
Hi.
We're joined now at the Boston Public Library by the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, for her February Ask the Mayor appearance. The number, if you want to call her or text the question or comment, is 877-301-8970. If you're here at the library and would like to ask a question, you can find our brand new colleague, Nicole, who is right there. Raise your hand, Nicole. And Annie, who is somewhere in the neighborhood. We'll see her in a couple of seconds. Mayor Wu, it's good to see you. And I think you're bearing gifts today, not for me and Marjorie, but for everybody. Is that correct?
Happy Valentine's Day.
A happy Valentine's Day.
So in celebration of Valentine's Day and Black History Month for my show and tell this month. We have a gorgeous flower arrangement from the, it's called Boss Shop in the South End. It is the first kind of physical retail location of Black-Owned Boss, which is a collective owned by Jada Turner, who sources and promotes local Black-owned businesses. And so this particular arrangement was actually created by two young Black women who have a business called Social Butterflies. They do events, they do the floral arrangements, and it's beautiful.
Totally beautiful.
It is
Can we
gorgeous.
say their names? Valerie, Francois, and Paige Pasley, is that?
Yep, for Social Butterflies.
Great.
And then the business owner, Jada Turner.
Totally beautiful.
Mary Wu always shows up with wonderful little things.
She does,
doesn't
and we
she?
show up with nothing except for ourselves, yeah.
But we're going to improve. We're going to
I
up
don't
our
think so,
game.
Sparkling
actually.
wit.
One of these,
Thank you so
sparkling
much.
wit. That's right. So Mary Wu, let's start with something that's going to be good news for a lot of people around town that are struggling with their taxes. What's going on with the Tax Help Coalition?
Yeah, we are now multiple decades in of a really important city program that actually doesn't get a lot of airtime or attention, but there's a free tax prep program for anyone in the city who's making $60,000 or less. They help tens of thousands of residents every year, and you can go to, let me just double check, I think it's bostontaxhelp.org, and there are walk-in locations, there are workshops, and so we just want people to feel prepared and ready. Okay, it's the Boston Tax Help Coalition.
She's checking her phone.
BostonTaxHelp.org. That's right.
And is there an income ceiling for eligibility for this or no?
So for entirely free tax prep, it's $60,000 or below for income, and they're available in 7 different languages.
That's
and
great.
In person and through consultation.
That's terrific. I didn't know about that either. We've talked to a lot of guests this week since you named the members of the Reparations Task Force in furtherance of an order or whatever it's called passed by the city council. The thing we were curious about, which both of us really like, is you picked 2 11th graders. What was the thinking
and one
behind
kid from
this, Mayor
UMass.
Wu? Yeah.
Yeah, well, this was in part a charge from the city council and from the many people who have pushed for and advocated for the city to formally and officially take a look at our role in history in the slave trade, in the many ripple effects and continued benefits that the city of Boston as a formal government entity profited from, and our role in that. And the charge was to do so in an intergenerational way. So there's a clear call for young people to be represented, and we have not only a college student, but high school students, 2 11th graders from the Berg who are incredible. We had asked for recommendations from many sources and educators and peers, and then the 2 of them decided that they actually both wanted to have another classmate on as well with them. So they both are on the basketball team. Then they report back when they come to the meetings of how the game went for everyone. And so they're fantastic.
You know, Mayor Wu, my understanding from our colleague Soraya Wintersmith, who did a piece on this, is that there's some discussion about whether the reparations should include people whose are actual descendants of slaves or people who came here from other countries but are Black and have been subjected to the kind of racism that whether you're a descendant of slaves or not, you're subject to. Has that been decided, or is that up in the air, or what's that about?
Ultimately, the task force will lead forth these recommendations and work with research partners, but my understanding, and where I think our administration and from what I understand the city council process, our goal is for this to focus on the specific impacts of enslavement and the city of Boston's role in that, and therefore to, there are many wide-ranging, continued, lasting disparities and inequities that stem from racial injustices tied to many official practices. We want this committee to focus on the practice of enslavement and what that has meant and how that continues to impact residents today, and to create some official repair and restoration for that.
And the deadline is June 2024?
There's not a hard deadline, but I would say the real deadline, what we as a city want to ensure that we are fully prepared for, is we have 2 big anniversaries coming up in July 2026, the big anniversary for our country, July 4th, 2026, and then in 2030, the city of Boston will celebrate our 400th anniversary as a city. And so by both of those certainly by 2026, I would like us to be well on the pathway to having identified changes that we need and implementing some of them.
We're going to get to your calls and texts in a second at 877-301-8970. Last time you were here, or maybe the time before, we talked about your rent stabilization proposal, at least the initial shot at it. You have subsequently actually filed something with the city council with a modest change, I guess you could say. For those who are not familiar with the content, could you give a brief description of what it is you filed?
Yeah, it's a little bit in the weeds. I will just mark that. There are a couple dimensions as to how cities in the past had been able to affect rents in some way. And we are putting forward specific parameters on those and asking for basically city council approval, but then statewide approval because of a ballot initiative that actually banned any municipality in Massachusetts from having any way to regulate rents for several decades now. So we're in some ways restoring the ability for cities to have this conversation and putting forward our own proposal so the State House also understands what we would be looking to do and the general public. So those provisions are, one, to cap the rate of increase of rents annually at inflation plus 6%. Except in very, very high inflation years, that number would not be able to go above 10%. For example, in this year, we're ranging on 7%. It wouldn't be the 7 plus 6 to 13. It would just be capped at 10 overall, but most years it would be below that with sort of more average inflation. We would also exempt new construction that for the first 15 years, so we're not disincentivizing what would be a very, to be able to recover your costs from building a new building through rents. We are also allowing for exemptions for owner-occupied properties that are 6 units or smaller. That's generally how we define smaller properties in Boston. And there's just more, it's less of a professionalized industry there. There's just more informal nature of that. And so we want to respect small property owners. And those are the main provisions.
A couple of quick questions about this, then we will get to your calls and texts at 877-301-8970. First, are you worried about the city council vote? I mean, you know far better than we. Some think this doesn't go far enough, that 10% is too high. Obviously, the landlords, even though I don't understand it at all, think the 15-year exemption is not enough, which suggests to me they haven't even read it. There's some more moderate-leaning people in the city council who don't think rent control should happen at all. We focused with you almost totally on the legislature. Is it possible this doesn't make it through the city council?
That is, anything is possible. This is a real legislative process, and it has to happen at both levels of government. I think some of the early coverage of our proposal, even before all the details came out, were just that we're bound to face opposition on all sides because we're really trying to thread a very specific needle here, which is we need to boost housing production. We need to have more affordable housing created, and we need to protect people in their homes today while we're getting to the point where supply and demand are closer to meeting and easing the pressure. And so we, too far on the restrictions and affecting the ability to make projects work and for people to invest and live and be able to maintain housing, that has impacts on a different side that we're also trying to change. And then too little restriction, and then we're not actually keeping people in their homes either. So this is really a balance that we have, that we're putting forward based on a whole year of looking at the current conditions, past conditions, and
have you talked to city councilors about this?
They have been, we have had conversations about what we're putting forward. We've had some initial conversations, but by no means have we kind of.
Are you confident you have
everything.
votes, or you're not? Are you confident you have enough votes there to get?
I'm confident that this is a proposal that meets every criteria that we were set out to meet. I think it's a matter now of whether the council also values those same goals that we have, or if they're trying to do something different.
Just one last thing along these lines, and then we'll get to the phone calls at 877-301-8970. I'm old enough to remember when we had rent control here once before, and one of the big gripes about rent control was that it was not means tested. So you had like a person that was on the state Supreme Court was in a rent control apartment. The guy
the head of GBH.
Is that right?
Many generations ago, but yes,
I did not know
yes.
that. I know that a guy that was, for a while, was the mayor of Cambridge, was also in a rent control apartment. But there's not any means testing here. So what was the thinking that went into that?
Well, yeah, we're actually proposing a system that some kind of in the national sphere are calling rent stabilization 2.0. It's a different model than decades ago when there were sort of hard caps on the amount that you could charge for rent, which were usually far below. This is more about making it predictable for everyone who lives in a home. Right now, people who own their own homes have Prop 2.5. You know that your property taxes aren't going to go up by astronomical rates every year because of that law. But if you are a renter, you're subject to the whims of that particular landlord and their life conditions or needs or attitudes. Most landlords in the city are not increasing the rents by double digits every year. It is, I believe, irresponsible if you're thinking about the costs of your tenants getting kicked out and then having to have costs of turning over the apartment. And all. Most landlords want good, stable relationships with their tenants, and that requires some degree of predictability. However, we have seen in many situations in Boston, particularly in some neighborhoods, that gentrification and displacement is happening because buildings are turning over and there's a pressure to get all the tenants out, or some landlords are trying to take maximum advantage of market pressures. And so this is about guardrails for those extreme rent gouging situations.
Can we take some phone calls
Well,
here?
I have actually one last thing about this, and then we will take some phone calls. Condo conversion, I assume, is what you fear.
Yep.
I would argue that that's the escape hatch for should this become law and should a landlord not want to comply. You have pretty modest inhibitions on condo conversion. Can you briefly describe what the disincentives are?
We have, actually the city has had in place for a number of years now, rules where if you are converting a building from all tenants, renters to condos, you have to give a certain period of time for tenants, particularly there are provisions for tenants who are seniors and tenants with disabilities that have an even longer period of time, as well as a financial compensation component. So that has been on the books for some time. This would strengthen that and make it more consistent and also provide some just cause eviction protections as well.
But no preclusion from conversion, just more expensive and
mitigation,
more time-consuming mitigation. Let's go to the calls. Marjorie?
Chris in Hyde Park, thank you for calling.
Hey, Chris.
Hi guys. Hi, Madam Mayor. Big fan of yours. I helped on I volunteered on your election, but the one thing that got more votes than you in the election was the restoring our elected school committee. And I know the city council is talking about it today, but I just don't understand why you aren't supportive of it and aren't hearing the people on this.
Thank you, Chris, for calling in, for raising it, for advocating on this issue. I have spent now almost 14 months under the hood of, I think, one of, if not the most important function of our city, providing the pathway for our young people to be nurtured and educated and connected with opportunity. We have had a tremendous amount of destabilization through the Boston Public Schools over many years, right? 7 superintendents in the span of a decade and many, many changes that come along with that. I have never been supportive of an elected school committee. I ran for this job because I want to make a difference in the schools. I want to have accountability and responsibility to be able to make the changes that we need with the advocacy of our residents, with the partnership of all of our anchor institutions and community organizations. So that has never been my position. I ran, not being for a fully elected school committee, and this moment also is one where we need to have a focus on stabilizing and getting our school facilities up to date and mental health supports and some of the academic changes that we're making. And so I'm not supportive of changing the governance structure at this time.
Chris, thanks
thank
for
you
the call.
for the call. While we're talking about the schools, there's a new legislative proposal that would eliminate Massachusetts' ability to take over so-called underperforming schools. I know there was a lot of threats last year about the state taking over the Boston Public Schools. The record hasn't been great about taking over other school districts. So where are you on this proposal? Is that something you would support?
I will say that part of the reason why we have, anyway, I'm trying to find a nice way to say this. It took a tremendous amount of energy, unnecessary stress, and anxiety for the entire school community and all of the pieces of that to fight off state takeover. It has not been shown to be effective in other communities. I've heard from fellow mayors, former mayors in other parts of the country, fellow mayors in Massachusetts who've said, we were in a situation we somehow couldn't avoid the takeover, and now we are still in it and it's not helping, and we're continuing to deal with the stress and the extra baggage and distraction of it. And so I'm really glad that we got to a point in Boston where we didn't have to go down that path. I'm not sure that, some people say, well, it's a hammer hanging over your head and then it forces you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. No, I would be doing more right now if we had not had a period of time needing to fight off within our own government misconceptions and continually having to battle that back. We need to make big changes in the Boston School District, and we need the support and partnership of our state. That's where we've landed, and that's what I'm grateful that we're continuing to work towards. But I found that process to be pretty distracting for everyone and unnecessary.
So it sounds like you think this is a good idea, that the state be prohibited?
I'm glad that we didn't go down that path in Boston.
Okay.
I won't pretend to know every situation about every school district across the state, but I have also heard from fellow mayors that it has not worked out in other places either.
How is the takeover avoidance relationship with the state going?
Our superintendent and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, they're in regular contact, and so we have different items that are laid out as milestones. I mean, to be honest, my standards for BPS, the superintendent's standards, what we believe our families deserve, is those standards are far higher than what is captured in a legal document that has my name and signature on it. We are going to fulfill that. We are working towards all the pieces of that. Some of those pieces are tied to, for example, the number about bus on-time performance and the commitment to work to 95% on-time performance. We are at 98, 99% within the first 15 minutes, but with traffic, with Boston Public Schools being responsible for dropping off all of the other charter parochial schools with all different start times as well. There are extra complications that we're seeing in that. We're closer to the 89, 90% rate. So we're fighting to get the rest of the way there on all those little nitty-gritty details. But our ambitions for BPS are far larger than what's contained in that document.
You seem to be a tad aggravated that you're under the thumb of the state at all. You are. Is that a fair statement?
That could probably apply to any subject.
And it would apply to this.
I appreciate partnership. I think it's helpful for everyone to be on the same page and to have things in writing. I think sometimes the tone of how that is discussed and used as a threat or not is counterproductive to having a true, real, productive partnership. We are there with what's on paper. We stand behind it, and I'm glad that that's where we ended up. But the process itself to get there, I think, did not have to go how it went, and continues to sometimes bubble up as moments of unnecessary butting heads rather than really digging in on focusing on the kids and our students.
I'll take that as a yes, Mayor. Well, thank you very much. Nancy and, I'm sorry, Michael. We'll get to you, Nancy, in a minute. Michael and JP, welcome. You're on with the mayor.
Okay. Hello, Mayor. This is Michael from JP. I'm one of the members of your task force. I really appreciate your leadership and Jim Browdy's leadership in putting rent control under serious consideration at the State House. But one of the weaknesses in the proposal, or an area that could be improved, is the vacancy decontrol provision, so that when people move out or die, the landlords would be able to raise rents to any level. That would really create an incentive for landlords to get rid of tenants by hook or by crook, as happened in New York some years back. So would you be willing to consider having a limitation on how much rents could go up upon turnover, perhaps imposing the same restriction, the 6%, 6 to 10% on turnover rents to address that problem, prevent harassment.
Great point. Michael, thanks for the call.
And thank you, Michael, for all that you do and for helping steward this and many other affordable housing and stabilization proposals forward. We discussed this, and again, this has now officially entered the legislative process for a lot of back and forth and public conversation. So this should definitely be something that is raised and weighed and evaluated. I'll just explain why we ended up where we did for the initial proposal, which is to think very specifically about, again, what is the goal of what we want to accomplish with rent stabilization in Boston. I will be very honest that if I could wave a magic wand with a piece of paper that was a rent stabilization home rule and say, I want to fix the housing crisis, I would do it. There are limitations to what can be accomplished through this one particular tool. And rather than try to do more than would feasibly work, I wanted to be very specific about what it would accomplish. And that is to keep people who are in homes now in their homes, rather than to use this as a way to indirectly try to bring down rents across the entire market, because we need to be pushing for community land trust and affordable housing and boosting housing production with more affordable development to do that part of it. And so this is meant to complement it. Vacancy decontrol, or the either a hybrid version or keeping the rate pegged even if a new tenant moves in, it adds many layers of bureaucracy to needing to then investigate after every single tenant moved out what the level was and how to match that back up and double check and audit. And many of the ways in which we are actually slowing down new affordable housing is because there are checkpoints that we have built in and bureaucratic points that in fact we're now looking to streamline and simplify a bit. And so this idea was we want to keep people in their homes who are living in those apartments now, and we put in place just cause eviction protection so that people can't just be by hook or by crook kicked out of those apartments. And so that together should stabilize residents. And then if it's about moving into a new apartment, it's really kind of market conditions that we are looking to bring down through housing supply.
Michael, thank you for your call.
We have a question from the audience. I believe it's Janet on climate resilience, wants to know about relocation planning. Janet, are you there? You have the question ready to go?
Can you get to that mic there, Janet, if you don't mind? Janet in the audience at the Boston Public Library. Welcome, Janet. Hi.
Hi, thanks. I'm looking at the climate crisis and your evacuation and relocation planning. Specifically, where are the designated shelter areas and the resettlement areas when the inevitable occurs?
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, there are so many examples in the news all around the world of why this kind of planning is more and more necessary, and whether it's Turkey and Syria right now, or major storms, or even thinking about what's happening with the train derailment. We have staffed up to ensure that we now have a specific person focusing on climate-related emergency management and planning. They're working together very closely with our Green New Deal director and the emergency management team. So the city does have a number of locations that are set aside and evacuation routes. That all needs to be reevaluated in the context of not just public emergencies, but flooding and where the flood paths might go, or other weather or climate related issues that come up. And so that is all in the process right now of being worked on, and I'll find a way to report back when we have more progress.
Mayor, well, we have to take a break. Before we do, just one last question about rent control. Do you worry about how much emphasis you put on this? I don't have any data to support what I'm about to say, but I think I'm right. It has been so center stage, both in your campaign and in your mayoralty, that I bet if we stopped 50 people or people in the library and said, list the top agenda items, while you have tons of them, I bet you that would be on almost everybody's top 1, 2, or 3 in terms of what matters to you. It's a risky proposition, as we just saw with City Council. The legislature's never been crazy about it. The governor did tell us a couple of weeks ago she supports a local option. She wants to see the details. Do you worry about putting so many eggs in a basket that has potential to fall apart?
Well,
Politically, I mean.
I'll just say that, there's the issues that I want to talk about, that I think about when I wake up every day, and housing affordability is central to that. Schools are central to that. Health and safety and climate, transportation. But then there's what the media wants to talk about too. And with certain topics, for example, rent control, rent stabilization, every step in the process is, talking about my same proposal. It's been the same proposal for a couple of weeks. We're talking about it again. I'm happy to answer questions about anything that gets asked of me, but in some ways the interest is already there. However much I sort of initiate discussion about it, just the fact that I think there's a moment where we are discussing this in a serious way is in and of itself groundbreaking and different for people. And it's been such a taboo subject for so many years that now just the mention of it gets disproportionate coverage and interest. For me, what I hope that translates into is, of course, passage of this, but also a larger sense that we have other tools that we could be using for our housing crisis that maybe we haven't talked about as much. And we can rally momentum for issues that people thought were previously untouchable, and ways of thinking about things that we actually should be applying to a number of different subjects. So is it risky? I mean, I suppose everything that announcing it's always easier to do nothing and to try to avoid introducing any change, and certainly controversial changes, but we don't have any choice right now except for to try to tackle the hardest things in front of us.
So quickly, what's the one item that you go back to your office every day and say, I can't believe that the press continues to ignore this thing that is unbelievably important to the people of Boston? Is there one or two that drives you nuts?
The zoning code.
Is that really what would be at the top
Zoning
of the
code.
list?
I'm with you. That's huge.
I think, it's wonky, and there are things that keep me up at night that I do think are getting coverage, right? The Boston Public Schools, mass and CAS, are where we are in this economic moment. And then if it's things that I think matter a whole lot, but nobody talks about, the zoning code and our rules around how the city grows actually directly affects the housing crisis, directly affects our climate
Explain that
vulnerability.
to people, because they may not understand.
Okay,
Simply.
So how much time do we have? The zoning code is the provision of the law that sets the rules by what you can build without having to ask for extra permission.
Right.
How tall a building can be and what it's used for in a particular part of the city. We have an extraordinarily complicated zoning code to begin with. Some cities just say, okay, each address, you can look it up and it's either a commercial or a residential location, and then go for it, do whatever you want. We have tables and charts where there's conditional, forbidden, or allowed use for every single usage, right? Dog grooming, dance studio, exercise. And then we've had questions about, is something that is sometimes exercise, sometimes dance, a dance studio or exercise in the zone? It's extraordinarily complicated, and it hasn't been comprehensively updated as a city since 1965. That means that the vast majority, 90% plus of new buildings, have to get waivers from the existing laws and code, which require more process, zoning board of appeals to get an appeal to that zoning code, or a BPDA process to override it. In the meantime, even if we get it right in the individual negotiations for the waiver for that house or that building, we're not seeing how the pieces fit together, which is really what the code should be for, so that everyone has everything they need in their life. Access to schools nearby, good transportation, parks, open space, affordability. That should be what the zoning code holds, and right now it's functionally obsolete.
You know what we just did? We just talked about the zoning code. Are you aware of that?
Zoning code is very
Ms.
important.
Mayor.
As one who spent much time in my youth covering the zoning board of appeals, you can see a lot of shenanigans going on with the zoning boards of appeals if nobody's paying attention. We're talking to Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. The conversation continues after this break. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
Book sales declined last year, but not in the romance genre, and one Baltimore book club might help us understand why.
I was really raring to do a romance book club for the women who may feel nervous or made to feel ashamed of wanting to read this type of literature.
Breaking up with the stigma on romance novels on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you and Brown University pre-college programs, where high school students can prepare for college success, experience college life, and make new friends from around the world. More than 200 courses are available. precollege.brown.edu. And Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing the latest therapies and cancer specialists who are experienced in your cancer. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. We're continuing our discussion with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, with us till just before noon for Ask the Mayor. You can call her at 877-301-8970 or text her, or if you're at the library, go over to our colleague Nicole, and we'll see if we can get you on from the library itself.
So, Mayor Wu, before we get back to the schools and cops and rent control, et cetera, and the Zoning Board of Appeals, tell us about the junior Bruins team in Boston.
This is just a remarkable story of young people. We have a team of 11 and 12-year-old hockey players from Boston who took part in the International Pee Wee Hockey Tournament over the weekend. It was up in Quebec City, and they ended up playing in the final against a team of, it was called the Ukrainian Selects, a team of Ukrainian refugees who had been assembled through finding young people in the refugee camps in Romania and traveled to this game. And not only did they start the national anthems of both teams kind of intermixed and not sort of separated team by team, but all standing together, the Ukrainian team ended up winning. And even in defeat 3-1, the Boston team was so excited, celebrating with them, skated around, celebrating their victory together. So just an important moment of inspiration and sportsmanship, and feeling that camaraderie through sports, even at such a young age.
Before we get back to the call, speaking of young age, this Office of Early Childhood, I think you invested somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million mid 2022, and I believe there's some at least preliminary results about the investment. Yes?
Yeah, I want to get the numbers right, because each and every young person is a huge impact. So the team has informed me that since we have made that announcement, there are more than 1,000 young people now in new community-based settings for great high-quality childcare, and almost 3,400 in the Boston Public Schools. We were aiming for 900 new community seats, and so that's been a great success. We also had created a workforce development program because there's such a shortage of early educators as well, and so far 150 people have taken part in that program and signed up for free tuition to get licensed with a commitment to stay and teach in Boston. We have capacity for a lot more, so we're looking to launch a campaign to recruit more, to hear about this opportunity and get involved, change lives as an early educator.
How do people find out about that opportunity? Where do they go?
You can go to the City of Boston website, boston.gov, and look up the program there. We're also going to be launching a more public ad campaign just so people are aware of this program.
You know, we have a question, Mayor Wu, from someone watching on YouTube. What is being done in Boston to address bad actors within our police force? This person is interested about white nationalist participation, but I know you're in negotiations with the Boston police now for their new contract, and we have talked many, many times back to Commissioner Evans about Boston police getting fired for good reasons, getting their job back. NBC Boston reported just recently about one particular police officer who was fired back in 2009 for strangling someone or trying to. The person survived, but caused a brain bleed, and then was fired many years before that because he was one of the police officers involved in the brutal beating of Michael Cox, who's now the police commissioner. He was fired twice. Cost the city $3 million, and he was brought back by arbitration to his job. So if you could touch on that policy, and also the caller's question about participation in white nationalist activities.
Yeah, this is an area where, again, sometimes similar to the zoning code, where actually many of the impacts that we see and feel more broadly in community are tied down to sometimes arcane bit of legalese that we don't talk about a lot. The police contracts, the collective bargaining agreements that govern not only wages and salaries, but a whole lot of operational pieces really impact discipline and accountability as well. And so one big push that we are still undergoing as we're in negotiations with our police unions is to establish parameters where there will be cases that you cannot appeal certain aspects of. When there are certain kinds of determinations that are made, we don't need a whole extra back and forth for many, many months or even years to restore people to the force. This is a job that is so important for the city. I've had the chance to ride along with our officers and see the work that they put in and day out. We are so proud to be a city where many look to for professionalism, for training, for community focus. But just one or a few incidents where folks who actually shouldn't be on the job, staying on the job, affects the trust for everyone. And so that is actually a provision that is in the best interest of all of our officers to ensure that those who should not be doing this job are not doing the job.
But that's pretty important to the union there, too. Is this something that is a red line for you? Meaning if there's not some reform of this arbitration process that you just described, there's no contract?
Yes.
That's okay. One last thing about police. I've asked you about this a lot, and I still don't understand what's going on. There was allegedly a Boston police officer, Abbassiano, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing it, who was a January 6th. He accused Vice President of treason, said apparently on his Twitter account, "Hope you never sleep well again," meaning him. He has been on medical leave living in New Hampshire for almost 2 full years since January 6th. I asked you about it a couple of weeks ago. You said there has been a process. So I guess I have a few questions. Can you describe what process is going on, why it hasn't been resolved in 2+ years, and does the city know if his claim of medical disability is legit, Mayor?
I can't say everything or too much because the processes are still ongoing now. What I will say is that anytime there is a complaint raised about behavior that is not representative of the standards of our officers or misconduct or any category, there are multiple mechanisms to investigate on this, including the Internal Affairs Department. There has been extensive review happening, and those processes usually involve gathering facts, interviewing many individuals related to kind of test the validity of various pieces of what has been presented, and then having a due process where there's a back and forth with the individual around their legal rights and a hearing and all of that. And so given the many transitions within various roles that are impacted there, the Internal Affairs Bureau and Commissioner, it has been a way more drawn out process than it should have been. But we are now, with all of those roles firmly solidified for a few months now, working through this and other processes that are ongoing.
In May of 2021, then acting head of the Boston Police, Greg Long, said this will be resolved in a few weeks. It's like 18 months later. So is there a realistic time frame on when this issue, and from what I read, and I'm sure you know more than I, virtually every city in America that had a law enforcement person at January 6th has resolved the issue one way or another. We're an outlier in this regard. What kind of time frame are we talking about?
I can't put a specific time frame on it, but I'll just say, ask me again next month, and hopefully I'll have more to say.
Fair enough.
We have another audience question, this one on youth violence. I believe the questioner is Greer.
Hi, Greer.
And that wants to talk about the Be Smart program.
I'm actually reading a question for Greer, who's here. She has a medical issue.
Okay.
So
could you raise your mic just tilt it? Perfect.
Okay. I'm actually reading a question on behalf of Greer, who has a medical issue. My name is Robert Redd. I'm a former teacher in the Boston Public Schools over 33 years. It's a two-part question. Mayor Wu, what is your plan for dealing with youth violence in the city of Boston? That's the first part. Mm-hmm. And also, have you reached out to the individuals who are involved in the very successful Be Smart program, which was implemented very successfully? The Be Smart program consisted of a collaboration between law enforcement, state police, prison authorities, Boston police, and youth service providers, Boys Club, YMCA, and so forth. The site was the Chevu skating rink in Mattapan, and that was the site for youth covering the entire city. So those are the...
Can I ask you, what did you teach for 33 years?
Well, I retired teaching English and reading, but I was an administrator for 12 years, and I retired from Boston Latin School in 2008.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Red. Thank you for all that you've done for our city and our young people. And thank you for reading the question on behalf of Greer as well. This is something that keeps me up at night when we think about what our young people are facing now and the challenges that they have. The pandemic very much is still tangible in their lives and in the impacts that we see. Even recently, in the last few days, another incident where juveniles have been involved. And we see the number of juveniles who are showing up in police reports about any number of public safety incidents of all types on the rise. We hear from educators who are in the classrooms today and school nurses and guidance counselors and psychologists that the depth and scale of need for mental health supports in our schools is very, very acute. And so we're working on all of those pieces in the infrastructure. For youth violence broadly, I think there's a number of our new senior advisor for public safety, who Isaac Yablo, who follows in the footsteps of Dr. Rufus Falk, who really helped steer a transformation in how the city wraps around supports through public safety to get at root causes. Isaac is incredible and is this month launching his specific community engagement process around some of these issues in partnership with Dr. Kevin Simone, who is our new Chief Behavioral Officer for the city, who is focused on youth mental health in particular, and some community partners like James Hills, who've been focusing on having a healing space for community members as well to process and address trauma that we see compounded in the neighborhoods. Most of all, there's kind of a framework of 3 parts of experience that we want to build into this. Your lived experience as a resident and community member in our city and for the young people in our school system. The proven experience, your proven truth of what the data tells us about where incidents are happening and how we know down to school communities and down to particular parts of the city what supports are needed. And then the built truth and the built experience of what our systems are designed right now to incentivize or de-incentivize and pushing the levers there. And so we continue to gather every Friday for our youth safety task force through the Boston Public Schools and 30 agencies, including some of those community partners. I'll make sure that we are up to date with the Be Smart program. I suspect that others have already been consulting them to build what we put forward now, but I will make sure that happens.
By the way, we had Isaac Yablo on, and people can search that on our website and listen. He was really an impressive young guy.
You know, one quick thing, we wanted to talk to you about the Last Call Foundation, but before we get to that, I was thrilled to know that we got 2 electric buses and we got more on the way, so tell people about what's going on with the bus fleet.
We are launching the largest electric school bus deployment in the Northeast, and the buses will be on the roads, or they're on the roads now running their test routes, and Superintendent and I were able to experience that and bring back the childhood trauma of sitting on a school bus and all the memories of that. Where do I sit? Even getting on, I was feeling, should I go to the back or the front? It's a quiet, smooth ride. They get, I'm trying to remember the exact number, but something like 160 miles on a full charge.
That's
so great for within the city, great for the schedules of a bus to be able to charge up and then go back out.
No fumes, no toxic
no
fumes
pollution,
coming out.
decreasing asthma in our communities. And so we'll have 20 buses on the roads starting after February vacation, and this is February school break, and this is going to be one way that we are tying together all of the benefits for our young people, for climate, for health, for jobs, the Madison Park Vocational Technical School will be where high school students have a career track to learn to service these exact electric vehicles so that they're also stepping into jobs of the future.
We want to ask you, before you go, as Marjorie said, I know you're going next to this Last Call Foundation thing, but one quick question from Kate in Roslindale. As the mayor's likely aware, a kindergartner was struck by a vehicle crossing Center Street in West Roxbury in December, which was at least the third pedestrian accident in 3 years on the street, including a death in 2019. Crossing the 4-lane section of Center Street is a nightmare. My kids attend the Linden, and she goes on and on. What is going to be done to make Center Street safer, and when's it going to happen?
Yeah, we need to do something. We see pedestrian risk on the rise everywhere. Some of that is distracted driving. Some of that is sort of people feeling like if there's traffic on certain parts, they need to rush through in other parts. But a lot of that is what we can control are the design choices for our streets and how we can more quickly deploy traffic calming and traffic slowing infrastructure. We, as a city, used to have prohibitions against speed bumps and speed humps and other kind of intersection, small residential street changes. Those are very important. We see our surrounding communities adopting much of that. And so we're looking to deploy that in many of our neighborhood side streets. That doesn't work for the bigger thoroughfares like Center Street and some of our busier roadways where you need to do more in terms of looking intersection by intersection of how to narrow and slow. And so this is, when I ask our transportation planners in City Hall where they think the priority is, many of them, we've had stops and starts in that part of the city and continue to see major crashes and injuries. And so this is where I think all of our conscience tells us every day that goes by, we are just praying and hoping that something doesn't happen. I'd like to get started on working with community to make something happen.
We only have a couple minutes left. We know your next stop is at this Last Call Foundation thing. I bet you a decent number of people know what it is, but for those who don't, describe what it is and who it is dedicated to.
The incredible Kathy Crosby Bell, who is the mother of the late firefighter Michael Kennedy, who passed in the fire along with Lieutenant Edward Walsh, when the flames overcame everything in a building where there was, it seems like, welding happening unlicensed, and the flames overcame everything and even burned through the hose so that the water couldn't get to where the firefighters had initially gone in. And so Kathy and her legion of supporters have been fighting to think about how we can make firefighting as a profession safe for our firefighters as well, who are saving lives. And so she's been focused on getting carcinogenic materials out of firehouses, really changing the layout so that those materials aren't then contaminating the clothes that are going home then with families and everything. Today we are kicking off the installation of a new kind of hose that is a different material and will provide much more resistance to high heat for a longer period of time. Those few minutes that hose will last will save lives.
Yeah, she sounds terrific, and it's called the Last Call
It's
Foundation.
right over there. It's Marlborough Street. Yeah, just a couple blocks away from where we are.
So
where we are now.
We're
so
done.
How's your Valentine's Day going, Mayor Wu?
I had to stay up all night.
Valentine's cards for the kids?
For the kids, and then I forgot. My husband was supposed to get it. Neither of us got it, and then it was late, and I was coming back from an event, and I was like, okay, everywhere's closed except for Walgreens. I went into Walgreens at School Street, and they didn't have, they don't have little kid supplies there.
Oh,
so
no.
then I had to buy packs of like the generic big Valentines and candies, and I'm taping them up in little rolls all night. 45
of them. Oh, you have my deepest sympathy, Mayor Wu.
Why don't you just order your staff to do it for you, Mayor Wu? No? Only kidding. Don't get nervous, everybody. Mayor Wu, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Please join us in thanking the mayor for her time today. We really
Thank you very much for coming in, Mayor Wu. We really appreciate it.
See you next month.
We've been speaking with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu coming up after this pledge break. She joins us every month, and we're very grateful for that. Coming up this pledge break, we're going to be joined by NBC Sports Boston's Trenni Casey. She's next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. Yes, Jim?
And we should say the Attorney General is joining us
That's
for
right.
her inaugural Ask the Attorney General at 1 o'clock today.
Book sales declined last year, not in the romance genre, and one Baltimore book.
This is our winter membership drive, and we're here to ask for your support. We just heard Boston Mayor Michelle Wu on BPR uninterrupted this hour, and we're taking just a few moments now to ask for your support for Boston Public Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Mark Cohen, joined by Jack Callahan.
And we're looking for 10 contributions in the next few minutes to put the wraps on this hour. As Mark said, we did not take any time out of this conversation with the mayor to ask for your support, knowing that you would do it right now. Call 888-897-9424 or donate online at gbhnews.org.
And with your support to GBH of $10 a month, you'll be able to choose an annual online subscription to either the Washington Post or the New York Times as our way of saying thanks. This offer is just for today only. You know them, the Washington Post and the New York Times, news sources that you trust and rely on. And now you can get the Post or the Times with a single contribution to GBH. It's a digital subscription. It allows you unlimited, anytime, anywhere access to all the content across all your devices. You could read as much as you like, whenever you like. Again, support GBH. Sign up as a sustaining member at $10 a month or give $120 all at once. Ask for the Washington Post or the New York Times when you do. 888-897-9424, online, gbhnews.org.
And we are looking to hear from everyone who appreciates BPR each and every weekday here. Again, we did not take any time for our fundraising during the time with the mayor, and even this time right now is short because we knew that listeners would step up now and understand the value of the conversations each and every weekday with Jim and Marjorie. Please call 888-897-9424 or gbhnews.org.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Boston Public Radio, live at the Boston Public Library. Who better to spend Valentine's Day with than Boston Globe advice columnist Meredith Goldstein? She joins us at the library to discuss her Love Letters column, the latest season of her podcast, plus all Valentine's Day dilemmas.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's time for another Ask the segment, this time with Attorney General Andrea Campbell, who joins us here at the library for the entire last hour of the show, taking our questions and your calls and texts at 877-301-8970. All that ahead, Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Michigan authorities are withholding the names of Michigan State University students who were killed or injured in last night's mass shooting until their families are notified. A gunman killed 3 students at 2 locations on the East Lansing campus and wounded 5 other students. They are in critical condition. Police responded within minutes of the first call around 8:30 p.m. local time. Police located the gunman hours later. Thanks to a caller's tip, Colin Jackson of Michigan Radio says police released more details today.
We know he was a 43-year-old male. We know that a citizen called in after police released a picture last night around 11 o'clock or so after their 11 o'clock press conference. Interim Deputy Police Chief Chris Rosman, he said that was instrumental in locating the suspect.
Colin Jackson speaking with NPR. The gunman died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. In Turkey, airlines are evacuating tens of thousands of people from the earthquake disaster zone and also ordering university students to leave their dormitories to house the evacuees. NPR's Daniel Estrin has this from Istanbul.
With so many buildings demolished or damaged in last week's quake, airlines are evacuating residents for free to Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir. An airline check-in staffer, Lale, only gave her first name because she wasn't authorized to speak publicly about the airline's work. She says it's been a sleepless few days processing all the travelers.
It was almost 150,000 people we took.
Turkey has ordered universities to move to distance learning, and students must leave their dorms ASAP to make room for the evacuees. A few hundred students protested the move at Istanbul University, surrounded by riot police. It was a rare public demonstration against the government's handling of the crisis. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Istanbul.
Former South Carolina governor and ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has made it official. She's running for president in 2024. NPR's Windsor Johnson reports the Republican announced her candidacy this morning in a post on social media.
In a message on Twitter, Haley called for a generational change for the Republican Party, adding that Washington has repeatedly failed the country. For now, she's the only Republican rival to former President Donald Trump for the 2024 nomination. Haley, who served as UN ambassador under Trump, also touted her record as a twice-elected governor of South Carolina and her leadership in the state. She's expected to deliver remarks tomorrow in Charleston at a campaign launch event.
NPR's Windsor Johnston reporting. The National Security Council expects to have new guidance by the end of the week on how the U.S. government should treat unidentified aerial objects going forward. Spokesman John Kirby says President Biden's national security advisor is conducting the interagency review and is likely to have a set of parameters for making decisions. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro in Brookline today. The Mass Gaming Commission is meeting to discuss whether Encore Boston Harbor and Plainridge Park Casino violated the state sports betting laws by allowing folks to bet on collegiate sports. The meeting is to determine whether the two casinos overstepped their boundaries and to set stricter rules going forward for when mobile betting will be allowed. And with temperatures reaching into the 40s and 50s this week in southern and mid-coast Maine, some maple syrup producers are already tapping their trees, and they're already seeing early sap runs. Jason Lilly with the University of Maine's Cooperative Extension says as winter gets warmer, the maple season has been gradually getting shorter, and it's starting earlier.
All of these changing weather patterns and weather extremes are having impacts on the tree health, and we as a research community are trying to figure out how that impacts the long-term viability of the individual trees, but also the industry.
More problems with global warming, and extended periods of warm weather like this winter mean that maple producers in southern Maine have to start working earlier than usual. Celtics are in Milwaukee tonight. The Bruins are in Dallas, and the Beanpot women's hockey finalists tonight with the Northeastern Huskies taking on BC. 47 degrees in Boston, looking for a high in the low to mid-50s today. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
The
Houston Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now by NBC Sports Boston anchor and reporter Trenni Casey. She's a BPR contributor. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. I bought you guys some. Oh, no.
That was Mayor Will, actually. Thank you.
I didn't know I was supposed to bring you flowers.
No, she is pretty incredible in terms of gift giving.
Yeah, plus, and she was up until all hours writing out the 45 Valentine's Day cards. She's got two kids, in the school. Yeah, I remember those horrible days. Anyway, headlines. Sorry, Pats fans. Chiefs are now a dynasty. Is Chief Patrick Mahomes on a Tom Brady-like trajectory? Not to mention the other guy looked pretty good to me, that Jalen Hurts, the quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. So is it all over now for us? It's all Eagles, Chiefs, whatever, for the next 10 years?
I mean, I wouldn't go so far that it's all over. First of all, my condolences, Jim.
I
was
felt
pulling for the Eagles, and they got robbed.
They got screwed. That penalty at the end.
They did get a couple calls that went their way. The punt return or the fumble return that ended up not being for the Chiefs, and then the Dallas Goedert catch might not have been a catch, and they got it.
Screwed.
But at the end, you know what? I hated that call. For those of you who didn't watch the game, there was a holding penalty with under 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter of a tie Super Bowl. And it wasn't like a pulling, grabbing. It
Horrible.
was, James Bradbury, the defensive back, I think is safety for the Eagles, admitted to doing it and said, I did.
Can you believe that, by the way? Have you ever heard that before?
No. And you know what? And their head coach, Nick Sirianni, said, you know what? It was a hold. They called a hold. But the problem is, they didn't call defensive holding the entire game. Now, as it was explained to me by football people smarter than me, there weren't a lot of opportunities, right? There wasn't a lot of man-to-man coverage. There was a lot of zone defensive coverage. We won't get too much in the weeds on that.
Please.
So there wasn't like a lot of opportunity for it. But still, to make that call, and again, he wasn't clutching and grabbing. He held them a little bit.
Yeah.
But that happens in football. And the ball was not catchable. That was the other thing. Even if he wouldn't have been held, it wouldn't have been a catchable ball. And most officials will let that slide. And I just think in that moment, on that stage, in a game that had been back and forth and back and forth.
Game.
It was a great game, and I was like, this is how it's going to end now? This is how it's going to end. They're going to kneel down for the last minute and a half, and they're going to kick out pretty much a gimme. I wanted him to miss that field goal so bad.
Would that have been great?
Oh, I wanted him.
Miss one
early.
So wait a second. So Trenni started this answer by saying, for those who didn't watch the game, a mere 113 million people watched the game. In this audience, could you raise your hand
anyone who didn't
if
watch
you
the
did
game?
not watch the Super Bowl?
Okay,
Actually,
we got
that's
a few.
pretty impressive.
We got a few.
Know your
Very
audience,
impressive.
Jim.
Maybe a dozen. There
Well,
you
they're
go.
more principled than we are, because none of us should be watching it, really.
But obviously the parallel we draw here in New England is in particular to the Chiefs, right? So the Chiefs have now been to 5 AFC championships. They have been to the Super Bowl, I think, 3 of the last 4 years. They've won 2 of them. It is very reminiscent of the time.
Yes.
Early
Brady, right? Patrick Mahomes is this dynamic player,
incredible.
although certainly someone who we knew was going to be a star in the NFL versus Tom Brady, who sort of came out of nowhere. We all know the story, 199th pick, blah, blah, blah. However, I just don't know that first of all, you're not a dynasty. I like you, Ben Volen. You seem like a lovely young man. I subscribe to the Boston Globe. You're wrong. The Chiefs are not a dynasty. I mean, Eli Manning and the Giants won 2 Super Bowls. So what, now they're a dynasty too? Like, and I understand that the Chiefs are more consistently good. They're consistently in it. But I think that you have to win at least 3 titles in order to kind of be, when you look at the best of the best, right? And you look at the Steelers of the 70s, the Packers of the 60s, who was good in the 80s? Now I'm forgetting. Somebody in the
Dallas
80s.
Cowboys.
Well, the Cowboys were in the 90s.
Whatever.
Oh, I'm sorry. The San Francisco 49ers.
I remember
of the 80s.
Oh, that's right.
Right,
Joe
so
Montana?
you look at all those,
Yeah.
and they all won multiple. They were good for like a decade.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what you need to be. You need to be good for a long time. And the other reason I don't think the Chiefs will catch the Chiefs won't catch Tom Brady and Bill Belichick is simply because Andy Reid's already 65 years old. Like, it's not going to be 20 plus years of this dynamic duo together where Andy Reid is going to have the opportunity to win 3 Super Bowls with Patrick Mahomes and then go 10 years like the Patriots did without a Super Bowl, retool the entire team, and then win 3 more at the back end. Like,
Let me
that
just
is
say
so
this, though.
difficult to achieve.
For somebody who's been watching football off and on in totally unprincipled fashion, and you'll understand why when we tell you another story about the NFL in a minute. The only 2 quarterbacks I think I've ever seen where when I watch a game, I say, they're going to win no matter what the deal is, him and Tom Brady.
I know.
This Mahomes, here's a little sound from him just to get a sense of him. Patrick Mahomes, he's on NFL on Fox something or other after they win the Super Bowl. Here he is.
Yeah, no, I realized in that second half I just have to run straight. If I cut, that's what I heard. I mean, people say you're battle tested. We played games like this all year long. I don't think the fans liked it because we were in a lot of tight games no matter what every week, but it tested us for these moments. And so over the last few years, man, I've had some key guys that have been on my team that have been in those moments with me, and I relied on them to be leaders with me. And we found a way to win at the end, man. It's just we got to get down 10 early, and then we'll figure out a way to win.
You know, we talked about the following a lot, but I want to give a shout out of sorts to Mahomes. He went out of his way not only to talk about the fact that history was made, first game with the two black starting quarterbacks. To his credit, rather than just glossing over it, he cited the names of players I had never heard of, black quarterbacks or would-be black quarterbacks from decades ago who were stars in college, got screwed in the NFL, talked about them, talked about how he was standing on their shoulders. I thought he was beautiful before the game.
He's great.
And he's one of the greatest football players I've ever seen in my whole life. He's
he
incredible.
Is likable. He is
very
likable. He's just, he's good in those, the State Farm commercials.
Yes.
You don't ever hear off the field stories about him getting into trouble. And he doesn't have this bravado. Part of the reason I was cheering against the Chiefs is because his teammate Travis Kelce, who is a tight end, really just a really big wide receiver. I mean, he took over the post-game interview.
He never shuts up.
He never shuts up, and he's and he's big, and he's like a meathead. Like there's no other good descriptor. And a lot of people like to compare him to Rob Gronkowski,
yeah.
But I don't know. There was always something like Rob Gronkowski also knew when not to talk. Rob Gronkowski always knew that it was Tom Brady's team. And for me, Travis Kelce always wants to make it him and Patrick Mahomes' team. And I'm like, no. Patrick Mahomes throws you the ball. Yeah, not the other way around.
But how about your guy, Jalen Hurts?
He is unbelievable.
I'm not watching football. I watch the Super Bowl.
Why do you have to do this all the time, by the way? You actually know a lot about football.
No, I do know a lot about football.
I know you do.
But I don't watch it all the time.
Her high school boyfriend was captain of the team. He was the quarterback.
He played in college.
He played. Excuse me.
Oh.
He started in college too, University of Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Anyway, well, not exactly the
I'd like
Clemson
to hear a little bit more about
but
that.
in any case, and also I didn't have any brothers. So who's my father going to watch football with?
Her boyfriend,
right? Anyway, but I was going to ask you about Jalen Hurts because I thought he was
fabulous.
I mean, the guy is an unbelievable running back.
He ran for 70 yards.
Passer. He passed for 300 yards.
And field reader and everything else. I mean, I thought was just explosive.
He really, you know what? He, unlike Patrick Mahomes, had very low expectations coming into the NFL. He wasn't drafted until the second round. He was at Alabama and often overlooked at Alabama, so he transferred to Oklahoma. I believe
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Okay, it was like an Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. Transferred to Oklahoma. Ended up going in the second round, and apparently, from what football people smarter than me, like Phil Perry, who were talking to scouts down there, they were saying that actually Jalen Hurts doesn't have a ton of arm strength. He's just a smart quarterback. He's just a really good. Like Marjorie said, he reads the field. Like some of the passes that he made were absolutely pinpoint accurate. Like he dropped the ball, but people tell me that Mac Jones can do that as well, that if the Patriots,
he moves. He really
moves.
He
can't run like Jalen Hurts.
Let me
He's
just
not
say
an
this.
athlete like Jalen Hurts.
The guy's running around the backfield and he's throwing the ball at the same time.
We come in, and first thing Marjorie says to me is, sorry about your team. I say, I appreciate it. I'm from Philadelphia, for those who don't know. Big Eagles fan. Okay, sorry about your team. My first words out of my mouth were not about Patrick Mahomes, but how brilliant Jalen Hurts was. And what do you think? Don't tell her. What do you think the first thing Marjorie said was?
About Jalen Hurts?
He is really
cute.
Good looking. I mean... He's really good looking.
Yeah.
Hey, if that's what gets you to watch the Super Bowl,
exactly.
We'll take it.
He is
I mean, there are a bunch of young men that are great athletes that are running around the field. I mean, what's not to like, really, overall?
You also have, Rihanna, the halftime show. I liked it.
But you know what?
Chris Stapleton,
we didn't need the outfits.
I love
Hold
Chris
on.
Stapleton.
We didn't need the outfits. I mean, if you're going to have all these beautiful people up dancing, including the pregnant Rihanna, I'd like to have not them look like they're in.
Show a little more?
Yeah, I didn't like the outfits.
Marjorie wants more skin on her halftime show.
She does.
Okay, noted.
Yeah, okay. Anyway,
I liked though how she had the whole thing on. I mean, she's pregnant, right? But I like how she had the zipper open and her little baby bump.
Yeah, that was
And then
cute.
it got everybody talking and how she led up to it.
But the other dancers were in parachutes.
I know.
What is the sense of being this gorgeous dancer when you're dancing in a parachute?
Well, they were half parachutes. You could see their abs.
Okay.
Because I was impressed. I was like, man, I should dance more.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what we should do? Why don't we take a pledge break and then get to this,
all right.
the underside of the NFL?
Okay, we'll take a pledge break. We're talking with NBC Sports' Trenni Casey. I'm
It's all right.
sorry.
It happens all. I do. You know what, Margie? Make you feel better. I do it sometimes. And I have to start over.
Yeah, that's the
rather
maiden
sad.
name. Casey's the married name. She's going to be right back, Trenni Casey, after this quick break.
You know that interview you just heard? Only on Boston Public Radio can you hear conversations like that every day, commercial-free. Instead, we ask you to step up and show your support every now and then. So pitch in at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
Okay, here's the deal today. We are in our pledge break. It's almost over, but we are in it today. We have one of those double your money kind of deals.
Love those.
A very generous group from the Beacon Circle patrons will donate an additional $1 to GBH for every $1 you give. So in other words, you give $10 becomes $20, $100 becomes $200, but that's only till 1 o'clock. So if you'd like to double your money and pay for twice as much stuff here at GBH, the production, the shows, all that, thanks to the Beacon Circle patrons, you can do it until 1 o'clock. And you can also get for $10 a month if you want to be a sustainer member, an online subscription to the Washington Post, the New York Times. I am such a huge fan of these games on the New York Times. I've gotten carried away with these games. In fact, I gave everybody game things for Christmas. You know, you get the spelling bee, Wordle, the crossword puzzles, all these kinds of stuff. You get that on the app at the New York Times. But the Washington Post is a great paper, too. But anyway, you can choose between one of them. Those are available until 7 o'clock this evening. But this Double Your Money match is only till 1 o'clock. So if you are inclined and you can spare a little change, that would be a great time to do it. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
And let me explain one other thing to you. If you do this Washington Post or New York Times one-year subscription thing, and by the way, if you already have a subscription, give it to somebody. Talk about a great gift, particularly on Valentine's Day.
How about the food recipes at the New York Times? They're
Fabulous.
great.
$10 a month.
Even I can cook them.
Even you, $120 all at once because of this generous group of Beacon Circle patrons. If you donate the $10 a month or $120 all at once, it becomes $20 a month and $240, and you get the New York Times or the Washington Post, which is just this online subscription thing, which is great. We only have one more day after day in the pledge drive, so it's time to start talking about procrastination, which I have elevated to an art form. Don't wait too long. Hope to give and then forget about it. Do it now. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
As we always point out, the vast majority of our money, more than 70% of it, comes from the generosity of listeners like you that donate $10 a month or $15 a month. Right now, if you vote, if you donate, as I said, $15 a month, what do you get, Jim?
30.
30. There you go.
Thank you.
Doubles the money. So it's a great time to do it. And it is a great time to get a subscription to one of these newspapers. I mean, they really are great newspapers. Thank goodness they're still around. Thank God the Globe is still around, because newspapers are dropping like flies. You have to pay for great journalism, and this is a small amount of money to get this great journalism all year long. So 888-897-9424 is the number, gbhnews.org. We know it's a difficult time because of inflation, because of people are maybe not working or whatever it is, and obviously not everybody can give, but if you can give, we'd be very thrilled, because Jim and I really like this job, and I particularly would like to be here at the end of the pledge drive. We don't know about Jim, but I would like to be here at the end of the pledge drive.
Well, tell them what they told us.
What'd they say?
If we don't reach the goal, one of us goes. And they're leaving it in suspense, which I think is a good way to do it. So a little pressure on both of us.
Okay.
The number is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/gbhnews. I want to recognize somebody since we're at the Boston Public Library, which is our wonderful host for our favorite studio in the world, the chair of the board of the Boston Public Library, Priscilla Douglas, right there in the front.
There she is.
Priscilla, we love coming to this place, and thank you and David for making us feel welcome like you do.
So we're speaking with Trenni Casey from NBC Sports Boston. And we mentioned before that we're not very principled for watching all these football games. And the reason I feel that way is because we have people like Emmett Price, who's on with us every Monday, who's given up watching football because of what the NFL does to its players in all sorts of fronts, concussions, racism.
Concussions.
Yeah. But this story really surprised me. I wasn't surprised that the NFL treats its disabled players terribly. I was surprised that they do it with the help from the Players Union.
The NFLPA, yeah. So there was an investigative piece in the Washington Post, and it was really, I think, spurred by what happened to Damar Hamlin, right? So Damar Hamlin, of course, goes into cardiac arrest on the field during a Bengals-Bills game. They cancel the game. He's okay. He shows up at the Super Bowl. He's going to be fine. In fact, I think he's going to be able to play football again.
Isn't that great?
It's amazing.
But there has been this, he was only a second-year player, so there's been all of this conversation about he is not fully vested in the NFL, which means he does not have all of the health insurance, the pension. He is not due everything that vested players would be due. Now, it was a high-profile case, so you'd have to imagine that the Pagliucas, which are a great family who own the Bills, and the NFL will make sure he's taken care of. But then I read this story in the Washington Post, and I'm like, I don't know. Maybe once he kind of recedes from our memory, maybe he's not taken care of. So the Washington Post did this deep dive on other players, some who had been fully vested, others who were not, but who suffered debilitating injuries due to football, and how many of them who sometimes do get their money, but the hoops they have to jump through and what the NFL makes them do in order to prove that they are hurt enough to receive these disability benefits is really unconscionable. I mean, and what Marjorie said about how the NFLPA plays a part, all of these parameters are collectively bargained. So when the NFL goes into, when they have a new CBA that comes up, their collective bargaining agreement, the NFLPA and the NFL have to agree on the terms. And because the players themselves vote on these reduced measures, these reduced protections. Because let's be honest, when you're 22 years old and you're a kid and you're about to go in and make $800,000 a year to play a game that you love, and even if you came from something or nothing, you're not thinking about your mortality. You aren't thinking about whether or not when you're 35 you're invincible. What am I going to do when this is all said and done and it's all over? So they agree, but also part of the problem in the NFL is because of the salary structure, right? So you have an Aaron Rodgers who makes a ton of money, a Patrick Mahomes who's a billionaire because of football. So you have these top tier players who make a ton of the money, but the pyramid gets very, very narrow. It's like an inverted pyramid, and it gets very narrow very fast. So if they would lock out and not play games, those players at the top, they can sit back and they can take whole years off and they'll be still financially stable. But if you're at the bottom of the pyramid and you're only making $750,000 to maybe $1 million, like the league minimum, which I know to the average person, I always say this, it sounds like a ton of money, but for a career that can be as short as 3 to 5 years.
Which is the average, 3
years. And these
years.
are mostly the linemen, right? The ones that may suffer the most physical damage.
Mostly like your linemen, yes, your linemen, your linebackers, guys who are in the front, they're in the trenches, right? They're constantly hitting each other. But even, skill players, you get knocked out once and you blow out an Achilles or your knees don't hurt.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Maybe you graduated from college, but did you really get any on-the-job training? So you have nothing that you can fall back on after football. And all they're asking for is just disability paychecks. Like, I am now unable to do anything else in life. And you're asking me to do it, and I'm just asking for the money that I deserve, that I gave to this sport.
Let me be clear, by the way, the union here, and I'm a big union guy, as most of you know, screws these players twice. One, in the collective bargaining agreement, as you mentioned, but we should make clear, on the individual disability claims, they have half the votes. They could freeze all these things. I think it's 3 votes or something. Whatever the votes are, equal number for management, equal number for the union. And the most dramatic statistic in this whole piece by this, in the brilliant reporting by the Washington Post, right? Washington Post investigative thing is, there's a federal law that says on these disability claims, the body that makes a determination, I don't know what the exact language is, but it's legal language, must give it, adequate consideration, due diligence, etc. The reporter calculated the amount of time at a particular meeting where 100 and some claims had been before this group, where they're required to give federally mandated due diligence, etc. Do you remember how many minutes or seconds they gave to each claim? 5 seconds per claim. 5 seconds per claim for injuries that were life-changing.
Yes.
And as you say, made people, because they were playing a game, and playing a game, and the owners and union benefiting from their playing, and they screw them. So people, you should read the Washington Post story. It's really
and the hoops,
eye-opening and painful.
By the way, they make them jump through in order to even prove that, like, they're asking for something simple. Can I please see, like, could you imagine being a 6'5", 320-pound lineman whose knees are shot and back is shot, and then they're saying to you, you live somewhere in Florida, and you're saying, no, you need to go to Ohio or Atlanta
to go to
or
the doctors.
Tucson, Arizona to see doctors.
The guy who couldn't fly because he was in such pain.
So that the NFL wants you to see, because these doctors are in their pocket. So these doctors are going to look at them, and they just want to go to their own doctors.
And then when they don't fly to Ohio, they get their claim denied.
Gets denied because they didn't see the doctor, they didn't show up for the appointment. It's just, and there are some judges in some of these claims for guys who won took them all the way to court, but it's also, keep in mind, it's expensive to take someone to court, especially and time consuming, especially an entity like the NFL. But for the guys who have gone and won, there is a judge in here, and unfortunately I just don't remember her name, but specifically who just excoriated the NFL and said this cannot continue to happen. But I just don't know that that's enough to really garner a sea change, because it would take, I think, a huge movement of a number of retired players to stand up for these guys.
Okay, so to change sports, but not to make it more positive, I have never met Alex Cora, the manager of the Red Sox, but I have to say from afar, I've always had positive feeling about him. You?
He's great. I've met him a number of times because for a while I covered a lot of baseball. I did a lot of Red Sox. He's awesome. He's easy to get along with. He's funny. Players love him.
Okay.
But this book by Evan Drellick, wow, really?
He used to be here. Evan Drellick comes out with a book. And by the way, for those who don't know, Alex Cora was the bench coach, meaning the number 2 to the manager of the Houston Astros when they won the World Series. I think people remember the cheating scandal in which they were banging on a drum, which essentially allowed somebody in center field to tell the people on the bench what the next pitch was going to be. So the batter went to the plate knowing it's going to be a curveball, a fastball, it's going to be inside, it's going to be outside. I mean, to say it's an advantage is an understatement. We know when's coming. And Alex Cora is quoted, and I know he's doing a press conference today, not about this, but he's going to be asked. His first press conference since.
Yes, because the spring training is starting down in Fort Myers, Florida.
I haven't heard any denial so far. He is quoted in this book saying when he was a little inebriated, we effing stole that World Series from the Dodgers. That is pretty, and he was suspended for a year, by the way. That's pretty damning stuff.
He was suspended, and for a while we thought that he would lose his job as the Red Sox manager, but they ended up bringing him back. Players really stuck up for him. I mean, what stands out to me in this article, Jim, is that there's something apparently also while he was the bench coach under A.J. Hinch, who was the manager of the Astros at the time, that him and Hinch did not see eye to eye, often got into it on team planes, in the dugout, like very vocal fights, and that a lot of this happened, and one of the things Hinch said is that he wanted to get rid of him. He wanted to fire him because he found him to be immature and insubordinate. And a lot of these things where he's running his loose lips are stories about where he's out drinking a lot after games. Now, listen, I covered baseball for a long time. I traveled with teams. Drinking is a part of the culture. Drinking on the road, you're on the road so much, right? It's just part of all of it. But if you're a manager or the bench coach for a team that's really good, you have to be careful. And apparently he's getting drunk, quite frankly, and telling even Red Sox players after he was punished and suspended, we stole that World Series.
So
how does
Major League Baseball allow this?
They already punished him, right? Like, I don't know, is it, what's the double jeopardy? I don't know that you can get punished again.
Double jeopardy doesn't apply to this. I mean, it's a criminal thing.
He's already paid his dues. He was suspended for a year.
So what's he going to say? Is the press conference happening yet today or no?
I don't think it has.
So what does he say?
I mean, I don't know.
He hasn't said it's not true in the last couple of weeks since it's been out.
Well, no, but he hasn't done any media, really.
Yeah, but if you're accused of saying we stole the World Series, having said it, and it's not true, don't you think he'd put out a statement saying it's not true?
I don't know.
Yes, I would say yes.
Well, the book didn't come out till today, right? So today is the day that the book is released. Now, excerpts of the book have been sort of leaked, but this is the first, when Jamie, your producer, sent me this is the first that I had heard these types of sort of inflammatory details. So, no, I don't think he's felt the need, but it's interesting, too, because let's be honest, he's going in front of a somewhat friendly set of
That's right.
media, unless Dan Shaughnessy is down there. If Dan Shaughnessy is down in spring training, I can assure you that he will not. That Dan Shaughnessy will be back there.
Got a lot of courage.
He's got a lot of courage. He will ask that question. Our John Tomasi doesn't go down until next week. Otherwise, I know Tomasi would
Tomasi's
ask
great,
it. He's
actually.
awesome. Yeah.
Hey, happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks, guys. Happy
Thank you
Valentine's
very
Day.
much, Trenni Casey. We've been speaking with Trenni Casey. She's an anchor reporter for NBC Sports Boston. She's also a BPR contributor. Speaking of Valentine's Day, what would Valentine's Day be without a visit from the Globe's Meredith Goldstein? Ms. Love Letters is here with us. She's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Boston Public Radio. Live, local conversations. Every day brought to you by listener support. Now it's your turn to keep the conversation going with a contribution in any amount. Call 888-897-9424 or give online at gbhnews.org.
So here's the deal. The only thing I love more than a smug mug, Marjorie, is a dollar for dollar match. And we have it now until 1 o'clock. Is it 1 o'clock? I think it's till 1 o'clock.
Till 1 o'clock.
1
Yes,
o'clock.
that is correct.
A generous group of people in the Beacon Circle patrons will donate an additional dollar for every dollar you give up to $12,000, $12,000. I will do the math for you. If you give 100, what does that become again? I can't remember.
It becomes 200.
Thank you
Jim.
very much. If you give 122, it becomes 244, et cetera, et cetera. And if you buy one of these subscriptions, online subscriptions, to the great New York Times, the great Washington Post, two best national papers, Globe is the best regional paper, for this 1 year online subscription for $10 a month or $120 all at once, and that offer is only available till 7, it gets doubled. It becomes $20 a month or $240. And I have to quote myself. Where'd Marjorie go? There she is.
I'm right,
I have to
pulling up
quote
my
myself.
socks.
It's a fabulous gift. I'm guessing a decent number of our listeners have a subscription to the Times or the Washington Post. Give it to your kid. Give it to your neighbor. Give it to your sibling. I mean, how great is a gift like that? I mean, it's fabulous. So do it now. You get a dollar for dollar match. The match disappears in exactly 27 minutes. So there's no better time to give it. 888-897-9424 or gbhnews.org.
So I always like to remind people that if we were not doing our occasional pledge drives to get money, because that's how we get most of our money is from generous listeners like you guys, we'd be doing commercials and they would be 5, 6, 7 minutes, 3 times an hour. That's a lot of commercials to listen to, and they're usually horrible commercials you don't want to listen to. So think about that. You'd have to be listening to all that every time you tuned in. We don't have that here. We have very, very brief announcements of things that are coming up, and we have these occasional pledge drives. So we're saving you a lot of wasted time and horror and anxiety listening to these horrible commercials all the time. So that's the deal. As I said, 70+% of our money comes from generous listeners like you, but giving $10 a month, giving $15 a month. As Jim said, if you give $10 a month right now, before 1 o'clock, you will double the money, which is a great time. It's kind of like getting a coupon, at CVS or something like that. You'll double the money.
Nothing quite like getting a 12-foot coupon from CVS. No. I mean, this is good, but come on, I'll tell you.
Yeah, okay. So you double the money. Whatever you can give will be double, and that is a great time to assure that the radio program you like to listen to here, because it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's not just, we're 15 hours, but that's like a little drop in the bucket compared to what we have to do around here on this radio station. We don't have to. Other people do to keep it on the air 24/7. Anyway, the number again, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming youtube.com/GBHnews. Our inaugural Ask the Attorney General with the new Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, is 25 minutes away. First, we're joined by Meredith Goldstein, columnist at the Boston Globe, where she writes the Love Letters column and the host of the Love Letters podcast. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
You have given me a gift, not just by being here on what is my Christmas, Hanukkah, and everything else. If you're a love advice columnist, today's a big day, but I got to see my friend Trenni.
That's right.
a very good Valentine. I get to see Priscilla Douglas, who is, talk about Boston being a small world. Priscilla, who is the chair of the BPL board now, is a relative, a very close relative of my best friend in the entire world.
Oh my God.
Who I lived with for many years in Boston. People always talk about, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of Boston marriages, which in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that's what they called women who lived together, two women.
Oh, I
and
did
in
not
some
know
cases,
that.
these women wanted to live financially independently from men. In some cases, in later years, people would say, oh, they were actually a couple. In the case of my very best friend and I, we were not a couple, but boy, were we good partners. And she was my Valentine, and still is. But for many years, we lived together. But if you look up Boston marriages, that term, it's a very interesting history. Women who just said, you know what, actually, we'd like to live together and not be bothered.
I love that.
Well, I think a lot of women may feel that way, you know, that they've lived with men, and maybe they'd be better off living with another woman, whether they were lovers or not.
Exactly.
But I want to ask you a question, because you are the Love Letters advice columnist. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on you today, right? You said it's your Christmas, Hanukkah all rolled into one. What do you do on Valentine's Day when you are the Love Letters extraordinaire doyenne?
Well, so far I've had a Marjorie-themed sandwich at the Boston Public Library, which if you come for a live show, please get it.
It's very good.
You know, it's funny. I think that the pressure I feel as a love person on Valentine's Day is to be super excited about it. And the truth of the matter is, this is a wonderful day, and I like all holidays because they like mark an occasion of something. But like for a lot of people, today is Tuesday.
Right.
And, you know, so you have to remember, like, who is this for?
Right.
There's a whole economy built around couples doing something. But I think it can be a scary day for new couples. How big do you go?
Yes.
It can be a scary day for singles. Am I supposed to be lonely? And I think for long time together couples who are on like 20th year, they're like, oh no, am I even supposed to acknowledge this? So what I really want to do is tell people, like, it's not supposed to stress you out. It's not, you know, the line I saw of people getting roses down the street by the T, it's like people are like, oh God, I gotta get in here. And I'm like, okay, it's okay. It's okay.
So
like there's no way to do it wrong.
What is the most common source of anxiety around? You listed a number, but what's the one that tops the list on Valentine's Day?
I just think loneliness, you know, and I think that's just across the board. And by the way, that does not mean single loneliness.
Yeah.
That means loneliness. So that could be, I'm in a relationship that doesn't fulfill me. I feel like other people are being acknowledged by their partners in ways that I'm not. So like, I really want to say to single people out there who are like, ugh, another commercial with hearts floating in the air, like, you might not be lonely. You know, if you're not, that's great. You know, like I think that we sometimes forget to separate those concepts.
Well, you know, is there like a book of etiquette for Valentine's Day? I mean, you know, your first wedding, you're supposed to get paper anniversary, whatever it is, those instructions. But you do, I think it is, you're not certain when you had 4 dates with someone or 10 dates with someone, or you know what I mean? And you're not certain what to do.
And beyond there not being a book of etiquette that exists for Valentine's Day specifically, what we do know about dating etiquette changes by the day.
Yeah.
So I always think about, I'm now in my 14th year of doing love letters.
Oh my God.
It's a long time. I've aged so much. And
But beautifully, I should
of
say.
course.
Beautifully.
And in the beginning, I would have told somebody it would be rude not to call, like, for a date. Like, you know, don't just text, don't just, you know. And texting was pretty new then.
Right.
Now, I'm like, well, if you call someone, doesn't that seem like there's going to be an emergency? Like, even the way we talk, texting is no longer rude. Sometimes now it's rude to call, to interrupt someone. So even with basic communication, every day, you know, I actually just spoke to a BU professor yesterday, Boston University, who was telling me about how most people, when they take things offline nowadays, based on her studies, younger people are going to Snapchat. So it's not even like we're going to take it to email or we're going to take it to a phone number. We're going to go to this other social media place. So like, you talk about gifts and Valentine's Day and things to do. It's like, what is right? So it's sort of got to, you know, you get to, the good news is you can't do anything that wrong.
Is this a Hallmark created thing? I should know this. What's the genesis
listen,
of this?
they're all, I loved, if only Hallmark, they used to be so powerful, and they still are with movies, for sure. I mean, it's an entire industry thing. One thing that I think is really interesting is the concept of Galentine's Day, G-A-L.
What's her face?
Yes,
gave a big
Karen
thing
Spilka
last night.
had one last night.
the president.
So that now I'm so used to seeing Galentine's Day, you know, I think it's the day before Valentine's Day.
Did you go?
I love the idea that people are like having their own holiday for friendships, even though I would say Valentine's Day is for friendships as well. But like this really kicked off with Parks and Recreation, the sitcom. This is an Amy Poehler creation of, and it just became, you see a lot of Valentines and it would be her face on it, and now it's an industry. So the origin of all of these holidays is one thing, and then now it's like, well.
So what are you supposed to do? You said it's for friends. What are you supposed to, forget little kid friends, like Mayor Wu was talking about being up all night, doing the thing for the 45 classmates of her 2 kids.
Yeah.
For adult friends, what do you do? Just say, you're a friend, I love you as a friend, and what do you do?
I think it's a great day to just treat yourself and treat a friend, and to say, we're all so busy and we're all trying to figure out in 2023, how to regulate after a weird few years, and to say, let's make time for each other. Let's have dinner. Let's take a walk. Like that to me is they always talk about love languages, right? My commenters love this. And I like the idea of quality time as a way we show somebody we love them.
So quality time might be, for example, I'm so glad you used that phrase, might be something like right before you check your lover's phone or computer, you clean his apartment. Is that what you...
So before you snoop into his private property, clean his place.
What was wrong with that woman? I mean, tell the underlying story. And
well, so this is... But
you don't say things like, what's wrong with that woman? I'm sorry.
I would never say what's wrong with that.
It.
You're talking about a letter, and you can talk about which one this is, but this, from day one, all 14 years, one of the most common problems people write in about is snooping. So they'll say, I looked at something I wasn't supposed to look at. I accidentally fell down and somehow into their email account. I don't know. Whenever somebody snoops by accident, I'm like, how does this happen by accident? But I do believe that sometimes you log in incorrectly on a computer that is shared by somebody else. But for the most part, these people are snooping. And I don't know if in this particular case you're talking about this recent letter where somebody found a video, right?
No.
Which one?
I think it was the one where the woman kept going to see a quote friend.
Some friend.
I think that was that
one. For 4 and 5 days at a time.
There have been multiple recent snooping letters, which is amazing. Yes. So this was an interesting letter from somebody whose partner was going to see a friend frequently and for a long period of time. And the question was, am I being lied to about it? They didn't really ask what is the nature of this friendship as much as I thought maybe they should have. But it really speaks to how much am I supposed to know about what a partner does when they're not with me. And I'm a big privacy girl. I think we're all supposed to have independent lives.
So with you.
However, and especially nowadays where you can see somebody's entire day on Instagram, it's too much information.
Right.
However, there is such a thing as lying by omission, and I would think somebody would know where you're going for 5 days.
Yeah.
Can I tell
weird.
you are so kind to everybody, which I love, by the way.
It's okay, because the commenters lay into them.
But wait a second. Didn't you, I think in this one, you had a list of comments, 1, 2, 3, 4, and one of them, I think, was, you cleaned his apartment?
Oh, yes.
Didn't you say that?
Okay, so the real kicker of this letter was that this letter writer claims that she found this information while cleaning her significant other's apartment.
Yes.
And the commenters were less concerned about why this person is traveling and potentially lying, and they were like, wait, you cleaned his apartment? And listen, no one's ever cleaned my apartment, unless they're staying with me and it's necessity because I'm kind of a mess. But that was the big thing. That is quite a love language.
But I want to get back to snooping for a second though, because it does seem like, I just remember with girlfriends growing up when I was little. I had a dear friend whose mother was going through her drawers, was looking at her diary, and I remember my friend saying to me, "Well, I may as well do it because she thinks I'm doing it." Whereas I would never want to interfere with my children unless I thought there was some danger or something like that. And in a romance, it seems like it's really creepy.
I am so with you.
To be looking...
It's different. I am not a parent, and the parent relationship of what to look into, that's a completely different thing.
Well, if you thought there was a dangerous situation.
Right. I mean, these are, but in the case of a romantic partner, if you're at the point where you're snooping, it's either a problem with you, it's a problem with the relationship. I mean, I will confess, I am an ignorance is bliss person. I would rather not know anything because I'm afraid it will hurt my feelings. There are certain people who, if a diary of a partner is just sitting out, would they open it or not?
That's right.
I would run out of the room. That's
so
how hard
like in Bridget Jones' diary.
Yeah.
I'm totally there. We got to take a break, Marjorie.
Remember we had what's his name, Colin Firth, looking at her diary saying how much she couldn't stand him, when in fact she was in love with him. So that's the danger of listening to somebody, looking at somebody's diary.
That was before Renee Zellweger had the head transplant, too, by the way. Do
Yeah,
you remember that?
Well, good for her.
Yeah, good for
We're
her.
talking with Love Letters columnist Meredith Goldstein on this Valentine's Day. We're going to keep talking to her after this quick pledge break. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio. We're streaming at the Boston Public Library, but we're streaming on youtube.com/GBH News.
Live, local, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, Boston Public Radio. It's here on GBH Radio because of your support. Now's your chance to keep the conversation going. Give online at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
You know, I'm just thinking to myself, is a subscription to the Washington Post and the New York Times a romantic Valentine's Day gift? Maybe it's not. But on the other hand, you do have all these great things about health and romance and love. They did a whole big thing on love in the Times on Sunday, and they have all those great recipes that could enhance your relationship with your significant other. So maybe it is a romantic gift. And the reason I mentioned the subscription, of course, is because that is one of our gifts today. To become a sustaining member for $10 a month or $120 all at once, you will get from us the online subscription, digital subscription to the Washington Post or the New York Times. And either way, the gift right now until 1 o'clock, so that's 13 more minutes, is double. This is a generous offer from the Beacon Circle patrons. They're donating a $1 match. That means between now and 1 o'clock, if you give $100, it becomes $200, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we appreciate anything you can give. The number is 888-897-9424. It only takes a couple of seconds, really. They're really quick. And you can also give online very securely. We're not going to give away your information to gbhnews.org.
Great comments, too. This is Renee from New Bedford. These are comments from people
who gave
at the time they made their donation, right? I need news that I can trust in the world today. NPR gives me all the information I can count on and need the truth. Marjorie and Jim, love your show. A lot of nice things about us. First-time donor, love Jim and Marjorie. Thanks for all you do. You know, that's Susan from Litchfield, I'm sorry, and Constance from Canton was love your show. The first-time donor thing, I've said this a million times. Marjorie and I made our first contributions to GBH before we were lucky enough to work here, and it feels really good. I mean, not only is it great for GBH, but you really do have, I can't even describe it, the sense of belonging once you make an investment in that which you listen to, and it feels great. Plus, we need the money. I mean, that is the bottom line. For shows like this are really expensive. We get all the credit. The bulk of the credit really should go to the people you don't know, the names that Marjorie reads at the end of every show, who do spectacular work that make us able to do whatever it is we do every day from 11 to 2. So you're supporting all these things with your generosity. And again, only for another 11 minutes. 11 minutes. Every dollar you give up to 12 grand is doubled. You call 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. It is really quick. It feels really good for you, and it's really important for us. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. We're live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News. The inaugural appearance of Andrea Campbell for Ask the AG is just about 10 plus minutes away. We're joined in the interim by Meredith Goldstein, columnist of The Globe, where she writes a Love Letters column and hosts the Love Letters podcast. Speaking of the podcast, season 8 is the next season.
Yes.
And you're looking for...
so we have a theme every season of the podcast. It can be breakups, it can be, marriage, it can be lessons we learn at different ages. And I have been desperate to do a season about love and money.
I love that.
Yeah.
So season 8 is about love and money. And already we're getting stories from people whose romantic relationships were affected by money. And I will give you a hint. Every relationship is affected by money. So we are, if any of your listeners have a story, it doesn't have to be something so juicy or terrible. It can even just be like, how did you learn how to budget with somebody? One of the I like to do seasons about things that freak me out. And as an unmarried person, I am very in awe of people who couple up on paper and partner on paper, and how that works out with their finances, because so many people will say to me, oh, well, we have our own bank accounts and this kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's a shared contract.
I hope you address the prenup, which I have to say, I understand intellectually where it comes from. Emotionally, I don't understand how you pledge to spend your life with someone. And by the way, the condition for spending the life is you won't screw me financially if we come apart.
I can defend it in a second.
You can?
Listen,
absolutely.
I can't. I mean, I think, especially when I think about people who are my peers getting married in 30s, 40s, 50s, as opposed to 21, when you have nothing, right? Like, it sounds unromantic, but it is actually...
No.
It's hedging your bets.
No,
that is
that's
what it
not
is.
it. That's not it.
What is it?
Especially if you're in a second marriage where there are children. You don't want the children of your new spouse to hate you. So you go into a situation where dad keeps everything that belonged to dad, mom keeps everything that belongs to mom, and then the kids don't hate you because they think you're going to steal everything from the spouse. That would be my advice to anybody who's getting married a second or third time, or God forbid, fourth time.
I also think it's important to take some of the romance. This is an awful thing to say, maybe as a advice columnist, but we get all this romance, right? Falling in love is wonderful, great, but marriage is a financial contract. It is a contract about who gets to see you in a hospital. It's all of these things that are actually quite unromantic on paper. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves about what we are buying into. I think so many friends who have gone through divorce are like, oh, I didn't fully get it, because talk about Hallmark, like the industry around it is like, pick your flowers, pick your dress, pick your maid of honor, pick all these beautiful things, and those things are important. But know what you're signing.
Yes.
And if you can still love that person anyway, great.
So if someone's got a great love and money story for podcast season number 8, how do they communicate it to you?
They can email to loveletters@boston.com. And people should know, unlike here where I show up as Meredith, because who else would I be? You can change your name on the podcast. We do protect people. They tell private stories, and we just say, hey, some of these names aren't real. So I'm always shocked that some people with the most outrageous stories are like, here's my name and address.
By the way, let me just do a shout out to somebody.
It's a great podcast.
If the woman who was cleaning that guy's apartment ever didn't get paid, you should go to that email and send that in.
We have to get this in, though. That the thing you posted today, the column you posted today, that people think people lie and misrepresent themselves on dating apps. They have very little faith in them, but they use them anyway.
So when I talked to this professor at Boston University yesterday, we talked a little bit about the lack of faith in dating apps. And she had just done a survey about, do you believe in this? Do you believe that this works? And most people were sort of like, oh, well, we all believe that people are lying, but we do it anyway. And one of the things I was saying in today's Love Letters newsletter is, I don't think a single person believes that any one thing is going to work. You talk to them before they walk into a bar and you say, are you going to meet your soulmate in here? No, they don't. None of these things look that promising, but then they are. Yeah. They aren't till they are. So I think that, I liked the idea that even though people are not believing that everything they see online is real, they're still willing to try, because how great if they're wrong.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people are out there trying, because so many people do although fewer people are getting divorced. Wasn't the divorce rate going down?
I think everything is a little wonky right now because of the last few years. And I remember initially reading in 2020, when lockdown started, that, China, for instance, had this spike in divorce rate. And I thought, oh, that's going to happen. But then I realized it was like that people couldn't file the paperwork.
Can I ask another stupid question? I think as stupid as my prenup point, which I was crushed by both of you on. The lying on the dating app thing, how stupid do you have to be? At some point, they're going to find out you were lying on the dating app,
Maybe.
What do you mean, maybe?
It's a long game. Also, it depends on how much you lie. And also, for people who lie about age, they might say, oh, you know what, I said I was 65, but I'm 70, and by then they'll like me. And that shouldn't matter anyway, by the way. Or they might lie about income. There's so many ways to lie, Jim. So many ways. And some will get you caught and some won't.
Okay, you get another good one here about a person that fell in love with a friend. They'd been hanging around for a long time. They had they didn't realize there were romantic feelings, platonic feelings, they thought, but then they realized it was something else.
Yeah, we did a little search at the Globe the other day to see what are some of the most common questions asked online. And the reason this letter was popular was because apparently we're all in love with our friends and not telling them. People were asking, Googling, how do I tell my friend I have a crush on them? So, I always like to err on the side of honesty. Yes, it can end a friendship, but was it really a comfortable friendship to begin with? If you're already at that point where you're panicking about seeing them and actually right before I came on, Trenni checked to make sure I had no food in my teeth. That's a friend. That's when you know somebody's a friend. If you're worried about them seeing.
Did you, by the way?
No, she
said no.
She gave me the A-OK, so hopefully she was a good friend and didn't lie to me, but that's a friend. If you're worried about that person doing that, if you're constantly on edge when you're with them, you might as well find out what the status of the relationship is. And that's, basically, what I tell generally these letter writers who are like, I have unrequited love and will never speak it out loud. It's like...
Speak it out loud.
It's fun in Jane Austen. It's not so much in real life.
Happy Valentine's Day, Meredith Goldstein.
I hope it's not
Thank you
I hope the rest
for-
of the day is not too stressful for you,
Listen,
Meredith
this is,
Goldstein.
it's just going to be we all need to treat ourselves, pajamas, food. That's all we owe ourselves.
Okay.
Beautifully put. Meredith
Thank you
Goldstein,
very much.
thank
and
you so
for
much.
your great comments, your great podcasts. I really love them all. You've been talking with Love Letters columnist Meredith Goldstein. You can read her in the Boston Globe. You can also listen to her Love Letters podcast, which is really fun. We're going to be greeted up next by the new Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Andrea Campbell is with us. She's going to take our questions and yours for her first appearance here for Ask the Attorney General. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
If you listen to Boston Public Radio 3 hours a day, that's 15 hours a week, 60 hours a month, and 720 hours a year. Maybe it's time you pitched in. Call 888-897-9424 or give online at gbhnews.org.
So here's the deal. One day after today left in the pledge drive. So if you intend to give, I would urge you to do it now. And now is a perfect time to do it. Actually, only have 2 more minutes for the double your money thing. Literally 2 minutes. So let me give you the number first. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. You contribute any amount up to $12,000 in the next 1 minute and 51 seconds. And your contribution is doubled by some generous people in something called the Beacon Circle patrons. If you choose to do $10 a month, which becomes 20, or 120 all at once, which becomes 240, you get an online subscription to the fabulous New York Times or Washington Post. I think those are the papers, that and the Globe, that Marjorie and I look at first every single morning. A lot of people say, how do you prepare for your show? That's how we prepare for the show. If you already have a subscription, give it to somebody. It's a great gift, even a great Valentine's Day gift. Just do it by calling 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org, in only 1 minute and 15 seconds, and that match, that dollar-for-dollar match, disappears.
Okay, we want to thank the people who already gave, and they include Mark from, Situate, who said, "We are refreshed by your unsensationalized reporting. You keep it accurate and professional." Isn't that nice, Jim?
Must be talking about you.
Must be talking about me,
Not
of course,
me.
absolutely. Christina from West Newton, I listen to GBH each and every day, starting with Morning Edition. I enjoy Boston Public Radio and tune in as she can for all 3 hours. Christina from West Newton, that makes us very, very happy. We do appreciate anybody that can give because, it means you're making the effort, calling the number, going online and doing it. It means you like what you hear at GBH. And I hope you like it because we rather like doing it.
Let me tell you one of the things you get beyond the fabulous work that all of our colleagues do, and there are fabulous shows on the station. We're lucky enough to be part of the lineup. Look at today, just alone. We're at the incredible studio at the Boston Public Library. Yep. I would argue the best studio, and I mean this, in America. 2, 11 to 12, you get an hour to talk to the mayor of the city of Boston, and in exactly 1 minute, you have an opportunity to speak directly to your new Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. That's a pretty big deal in my estimation. It doesn't happen anywhere else on the radio. So if you support that kind of thing, If it matters to you, and I assume it does because you're listening right now, please call 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org, Marjorie.
You know, we're getting a lot of texts. I just want to mention to people that were set straight in their romantic life by Meredith Goldstein.
I know that.
Yeah,
I
some
know.
really sweet texts from people. But right now, I just want to tell you, we have only, well, we're past, are we past the match now?
We're past
the match now.
Well, I think
But-
they'll continue until the end of this, this
Okay.
pledge thing.
The end of this pledge thing. So
This
if you want the
minute.
match, you got to do it now. Double your money. And the New York Times and Washington Post digital subscription is available until 7 o'clock tonight. The number again, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
My name is Alex Diaz. I'm from Dorchester. You are listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on youtube.com/GBH. This is pretty exciting for us. Our next guest has been on with us a ton of times, but never in this capacity. We're joined at the Boston Public Library for the first time by the new Attorney General from Massachusetts, Andrea Campbell. Attorney General, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, we're very, very happy.
Attorney General Campbell will be with us till the end of the show, taking our questions and your calls. You can call her or text the question at 877-301-8970. If you're at the library and would like to ask a question or address a comment to the Attorney General, Nicole, who is sitting in the pink, is that pink or salmon? Whatever it is, that sweater, just raise their hand. Next to her is our other colleague, Annie. If you approach either of them, we'll put you in queue. We haven't had a chance to say congratulations. Congratulations.
Yeah.
We're so glad to
Congratulations,
see you.
Attorney General. Very happy. Very
and
happy
people
for
are
you.
still clapping.
Yeah.
That's going to stop. Believe me, that'll stop.
Keep going. Keep going. No, thank you so much for having me.
So before we get to the text and the phone calls, I want to play a little sound for you. This is Jim promoting your appearance today with the new governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. Here it is.
The new Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, will make her first visit for Ask the Attorney General on February 14th. Am I correct? February 14th.
Valentine's Day.
And the mayor will be with us
Not
at
a better way to
1:30.
spend Valentine's
Hadn't thought about
Day
that.
than with you, Jim.
You know, speaking of... You and nobody
sure
else
that's what
feels
she's
that way.
thinking.
Thank you. It's a beautiful spirit.
Well, we did want to ask if that's kind of one of your dream days, is to spend Valentine's Day with Jim Browdy.
Yeah.
With both of you, and of course the folks in the audience. Happy
Nice
Valentine's Day.
evasion, by the way. There.
Happy Valentine's Day.
We have some chocolates there.
I brought some chocolates.
You did? Yes, she did.
Yes,
I'm very happy.
and apparently you need it because someone's off on the floor trying to eat lunch.
No.
But yes,
I was munching
you?
out of my
I-
lunch.
but no, I'm
like a
happy to be
rodent.
here. Happy to be here.
We're thrilled to have you, Attorney General.
So, Attorney General, let's start with basically how it's been. I mean, you've been there for just, how many days now? About a month?
About a month.
You know, what's it been like? Any surprises? Anything you didn't expect? What's it been like?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be remiss, as we're sitting here, I'm taking in the coverage of Michigan State and the shooting, of course, in Michigan State, and I've been 4 weeks essentially 4 weeks or a month on the job, and we had Tyree Nichols, obviously the horrific beating and murder of Tyree Nichols, the Duxbury murder, the Andover case, the 13-year-old shot and killed in Mattapan, where I live, Michigan State, obviously. And it's 5 years since Parkland. So there are moments it's been really heavy, but I'm not going to have an entire radio appearance where I'm sort of doom and gloom. I will say the best thing about my job, and I just told the governor this last night, I have the best job in the Commonwealth, I just do, is that I get to go into an office to work with incredible attorneys and staff who are passionate about public service, passionate about helping people to really do something to address gun violence, to address racism, police accountability, and so much more. So it's a blessing, and it's been wonderful and exciting. And I started my day today, Valentine's Day, with my oldest son, who is 5, at his school in Dorchester, which is a Boston public school, and that was really amazing.
Hold on, did you have to make out like 50 cards for the kids for Valentine's Day? Everybody has to do that.
We did cards over the weekend together, and he wrote his name, and it's Alexander, and so he wrote, and then finally he said, my hand is hurting, can you help me write my name? But no, it was wonderful, and they have a Valentine's Day ball, so I'll be there tonight at the Valentine's Day ball.
Neat.
But no, I have the best job in the world, and it's amazing.
Well, I want to pick up on what you said, and it is the 5th anniversary, unfortunately, Valentine's Day 5 years ago, Parkland. You talk about how much you care about these issues. That is equaled by how little the Supreme Court cares about these issues, as evidenced by their decision in this gun case out of New York, where they basically said Wild West is fine with us. There's a lot of concern. I'm among the concerned people, I assume Marjorie is too, as to what that Supreme Court decision and potentially future decisions could do to our solid and common sense gun laws in this country. I know that you filed friend of the court briefs in a number of cases challenging some of the stuff here, but how worried are you about the state of our laws with that Supreme Court?
Yeah, so the Supreme Court obviously going in the wrong direction when it comes to our gun laws, reproductive justice, and the environment, and so much more. I will say a couple of things. We should all feel really lucky and blessed that we live in Massachusetts, because we have codified so many laws and have significant precedent here to protect us. You know, assault weapons ban, making sure there are not guns that are sold that have defects, you name it. And so in addition to joining other states and making sure we're protected and protecting our common sense gun laws, we are actually taking direct action in our office and filing a couple of briefs since I've started against challenges from folks who are a bit extreme in trying to take away these protections to keep our laws on the books. And I'm confident that with that advocacy and fierce and bold advocacy that we will continue to be fine here. But everyone should be concerned. At the end of the day, we're reminding folks, whether it's Supreme Court appointments or folks in Congress who aren't moving fast enough to respond to the issues and the pressing issues of today, they get there because people either vote or they don't vote. So we have an opportunity to play a role in that. And so I encourage folks to continue that advocacy as well.
So, we didn't intend to get into these things till later, but since you brought them up, you talked about reproductive freedom, which obviously is being impinged upon, which is the understatement of the century, by this duplicitous Supreme Court. And I say duplicitous because what they said in their confirmation hearings and what they did in a number of cases were different. There's an individual federal court judge appointed by Trump in Texas who has spent virtually his whole career trying to undermine civil rights, particularly women's civil rights or reproductive freedom. It is believed that is roughly by February 24th, he is likely to rule that pills for medical abortions are not only illegal in Texas, but illegal in the whole United States. Assuming that outcome is the outcome, and let's hope it's not, of course, what do you do as Attorney General here in Massachusetts?
So a few things, but actually before I even get to the issue of abortion and reproductive health care, quickly on the guns,
Sure.
It is because we've been in office, and I say we, I don't work alone. I have an incredible team of folks, close to 600 folks in the office who work hard every single day. And we promised things when we were out there on the campaign trail, and so now I'm bringing those promises into the office to make sure that we respond. And a gun enforcement unit is one promise. There is a way in which the AG's office, outside of advocacy in the courts and filing briefs, could be working with our police chiefs and others to educate folks, including advocates, on what their rights are, how they can get a license, how they can't, work with them to get ghost guns off the street, which is a major issue. These are firearms in our communities, and they are prevalent, that are not tracked in any way. And of course, go after those who are hoarding hundreds of guns or illegally selling them. So this unit will be critical to that, and we're beginning to have conversations with folks about how to set that up. The other piece that is just as important, and we're running all of these parallel tracks, people, it's a busy time, but it's very exciting, is a reproductive justice unit. And why is that important? It's not only to make sure that the rights that we have here, and again, kudos to the legislature and others who got ahead of that decision and overturning, of course, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, to say we're going to codify the right to an abortion in our laws here. We're going to go a step further. We're going to make sure that the laws here protect your access to health care plans to cover these reproductive health care services. In addition to that, we are filing, of course, briefs and working with other AGs across the country to make sure we're taking on this Texas matter. There is one other medication that is available for folks who use that type of tool for an abortion. But let's be clear, it's going to take all of us working together. I'm really proud that in my first week on the job, we launched a hotline, an abortion hotline, for folks not only in Massachusetts, but even folks outside of Massachusetts, to call a number to get free, confidential advice and sort of like to know your rights, providers, patients, on what is available to you, how do you access critical healthcare services here. And so kudos to the law firms, Reproductive Equity Now, ACLU, and many others who stepped up to be a part of that. And lastly, I will say
What's
this.
the number before you leave that topic?
It is 833-309-6301. So 833-309-6301.
Yeah,
free
continue.
and confidential. And lastly, because we live in the best state in America, we should, people should know that the providers here in Massachusetts that are providing these critical healthcare services often go around the country to train folks.
Yeah.
That is critical. So as we think about provider shortages and ways to incentivize folks to really get into this medical field, Massachusetts is leading the way in so many ways. And so we should be excited, just as we are, of course, are fighting and pushing back on what's happening in Texas.
By the way, there's been a lot of concern, maybe less so here, but about providers' liability if women come in from other states where the abortion is illegal. What is the deal for providers of abortion in Massachusetts?
For the recent legislation that was passed worked on by our former Attorney General and, of course, folks in the office, as well as the legislature, and signed by our former governor, protects folks. And we have one of the most aggressive laws in the country on that. I do think the question is, how do we work with other AGs and other folks in other states that have lesser protections, because they're going to be coming here. And so how do we use technology, telehealth, and this hotline, for example, and other tools in our toolkit to make sure folks have access to these critical healthcare services and really quickly at moments so they don't risk their lives.
A lot of people interested in talking to you, Attorney General. So let's start with Chris in Boston. You're
All
on
nice calls.
with Attorney
It's
General
Valentine's Day.
That's
Andrea
right.
Campbell. Welcome, Chris. You're on with the Attorney General.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi.
Oh, okay. Thank you for taking the call. So I saw an article in the Boston Globe this morning regarding the Hinton Drug Lab and former chemist Annie Dukin and some evidence that apparently the Inspector General's office had withheld. I'm not sure if you saw that article, but it looks like the Inspector General's office referred at least 4 other people at the lab for criminal prosecution to the Attorney General's office, either under Copley or Haley. So, A, are you going to make all those referrals public? B, are those chemists going to be prosecuted? And C, is the former Inspector General Glenn Cluna in any sort of trouble for lying to the public about that for years?
Excellent questions, Chris from Boston. Let's hear what the Attorney General has to say. Could you back up and just explain who Annie Dukin was for those who don't recall?
She was a chemist who worked at that drug lab and was essentially making things up, creating evidence where none existed, and it did a lot to, sadly, jeopardize the integrity of many cases. And of course, there was another one who was using the substances. So some major concerns, obviously, continue with respect to their misconduct and gross misconduct. Obviously, this is, Chris, first of all, thank you for the call. This has covered 2 attorneys general before me over 2 previous administrations, so I'm getting a handle on it. I will, of course, continue to follow the guidance of the court, and so that article referenced one recent decision, but there is still decisions that the court has to make in terms of sealing and unsealing various records. But I can say this, the mantra and one value that in the office will always be transparency and justice, frankly. And we have an opportunity when we get more guidance from the court to really look at how do we right the wrongs in these types of cases? How do we be very forthcoming? And how do we go after justice? And so we're waiting for some more guidance. And I need that in order to proceed to the next step.
Can I follow up on a couple of things Chris asked about this? And it is true. The Inspector General just said the quote is that Dukin was the sole bad actor, even though he was at the same time referring Farrak, I think I'm mispronouncing her name, who also was prosecuted. And 3 referrals, which I think it was 3, where there was not a prosecution. A bunch of quick questions. Is the statute of limitations run? If you chose to take a second look at those 3 criminal referrals that did not lead to prosecution and concluded there was cause to prosecute them, is it too late?
we're going to look into it. And I'm careful to say that because why I'm careful to say that is we need more guidance from the court on what we can and can't do. And I have to also add, yes, a month on the job. It covered two, not just one previous administration, two, right?
Haley and
You're
Copley.
talking about almost 20 years. And so we're getting a handle on what the referrals were, what happened, what isn't, what that all is. And then, of course, as we get more guidance from the court, we will proceed in a way that people, I think, will say, oh, this office is about justice.
But one thing it seems to me, feel free to correct me, Attorney General Campbell, that is in your jurisdiction, that is not a decision with the court, is the lawyers, well, it's a court decision too, but I think you have a role in this. The lawyers, it appears from Andrea Estes' piece in the Globe, for the three whose drug samples were tested by the three where there were criminal referrals but not prosecutions, want their cases thrown out like tens of thousands of Farax and Dukans were. You could at least recommend to the court that there be that disposition once you looked into the referrals. Is that something you're at least considering?
We are waiting to see and getting more information on these. And I want to be clear. I am sharing very little right now because we are still just doing that, getting a handle on all of the information. Of course, the Globe has some, and I do read the Globe too, but not always, the facts and the full picture are not always captured in the article. But I will tell you, my goal is only to pursue justice and to do it in a transparent way, but hopefully to actually get this drug lab case, behind us. And so folks have some clear guidance on how they can proceed. So frankly, the next attorney general who comes next is not talking about this scandal 4 years from now.
We're talking to Andrea Campbell, the new Attorney General of Massachusetts.
Michael in Cambridge, thank you for calling. You're on with the Attorney General.
Hey, Michael.
Yes, thank you very much. Hey, who's in charge? Who's in charge of the photographers, the plainclothes photographers, of law enforcement to take pictures of all of us demonstrators? Then who governs the use and archives of their work? You could tell these guys are working for somebody in law enforcement, like the George Floyd, Tyree Nichols, Black Lives Matter, and other demonstrations.
Okay, we heard your question.
Yeah,
How about
I wonder if you're talking about any particular demonstration in Boston, or Michael, anything specific you're referring to?
The last one I was at, the Tyree Nichols one, which was a small one, not really with a lot of police presence, but the same photographers with their plain clothes with their backpacks, same type of cameras. They're there photographing all the demonstrators at parade.
Yeah, they could be. They could be also. They could be photographers.
It could be
Jim
and Marjorie. Michael, be careful.
I mean,
it could be Jim and Marjorie. I don't mean to make light of what you're saying. Obviously, I was on the city council, and anytime there is a protest or folks showing up and marching in the streets to talk about injustice, which they should do in the context of police brutality or anything else. There was some concerns that came up in the context of one protest related to George Floyd about if there was some surveillance happening or going on. So I understand that. I haven't heard any complaints about this. If you have concerns, I always say go to the local police departments who usually have the authority to actually oversee what's happening for that particular protest and also who issue the permits.
Michael, thank you for the call.
But
Can
I
we
also
take
think
I'm
if you're
sorry.
if you're at a protest, I think people can take your picture. You're out on the sidewalk.
Well, I don't think you want law enforcement surveilling you.
I don't think that. But I'm not sure who's taking.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I just lift that up because it did come up in one particular context related to one protest when I was still in the city council, and it was addressed quickly by the previous commissioner.
Let's take a question from Catherine, who is at the Boston Public Library, as she approaches the mic to talk to the Attorney General. Catherine, welcome.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Same to you. Yes, my question was about the folks that are in correctional facilities and the high cost of them calling out to their family members. That is such a, what do you call it? It helps them get through their incarceration if they can call their family members. But the cost is really prohibitive. So, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of the folks are from poor backgrounds anyway. And that's just an additional cost that shouldn't be there. That should be at least, maybe one call a day is free or something, and then everything else after that maybe, but at least something should be free for them. I used to work at Essex County.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'm on the record even before I was Attorney General as supporting legislation and measures to make those phone calls free. I think they're critical to rehabilitation that is successful. But most importantly, like you just said, it is a burden. And if we say we want to have our folks who are behind the wall have access to family members or other supports that are critical to rehabilitation, then we should make that easier. And there are many folks in law enforcement, including in corrections, who support this. The governor, who was then the Attorney General, also supported this. But I will just add, and I appreciate the question, I care deeply about prison reform, criminal legal reform. I was just saying this last night at an event where someone asked the question, but for you being in the role and being in a particular position, what would be lost, or what would you advocate for? What issue do you sort of carry on your back that you are a champion for? And for me, it's always been prison reform. And that's connected to just my personal narrative of having almost every loved one, mother, father, twin brother, die or be connected to the prison system. Most of my meetings in my first month have been internal, rightfully so. So there are a lot of external requests, and I'm saying, we will get to you. I need to meet with my staff and all the folks who work hard across all our 4 offices. But one request I did approve and go to was meeting with some men at MCI Norfolk Prison. There were hundreds there, and it was a part of not just Black History Month, but also the work this coalition is doing to change laws and policies to really address the disparities that exist in our prison system, and was excited to be there. And after leaving that meeting, have some real advocacy to do, including around this issue. And one thing I will just add, these issues that we talk about are not just affecting people of color. It's not a person of color or a community of color issue. This affects everybody in many ways, and as we incarcerate or criminalize those who have mental health issues or who are on who have a substance use disorder, you will see that readily in communities all across the Commonwealth, including in our rural communities. And I also see it as an example of disparities that you see in the system, public corruption, abuse of power, and there's a real way to make a difference from the Attorney General's office. So I added a lot there because it's a set of issues I will absolutely champion, and thank you for your advocacy.
Speaking of something you'll champion, I believe it was in right after you were sworn in, you said and you said in the campaign, one of the things you wanted to use the Attorney General's office to address was the wealth gap that I think everybody listening to the show has memorized, those grotesque figures from the Federal Reserve. We've talked to Lee Pelton from the Boston Foundation, who's involved in that Fed work to relook at those numbers. I think it was the Barr Foundation the other day announced they're giving $750,000 to the Globe to put reporters on to look into the issue. What can the Attorney General do around wealth gap issues?
So much. I can't wait to begin. I'm getting to it. So outside of the traditional ways in which we think about the office, some still say top cop, chief law enforcement officer. Yes, that is true. Enforce our laws with a sense of urgency, protect our residents, protect our kids. So there are several priorities, but this idea of really building economic prosperity and stability is absolutely going to be a theme for the office. And the office is doing that already in many ways. We've already dealt with, and I've dealt with, so many cases dealing with wage theft. People actually going to work and not getting paid their wages by their employer. That's a major issue in Massachusetts, not just in the construction industry where you hear it. It's restaurants, it's small businesses, it's many larger employers not paying their workers. That disproportionately affects, of course, immigrants, people of color, or low-income residents who desperately need those wages. That's not only putting money back in the pockets of residents, but it's creating economic stability for them. I'm also looking at housing. We know that that is a tool to help you build your wealth for the next generation and the generation after that. We have a neighborhood renewal division in the office that uses receivership powers and other powers to work with municipalities to look at blighted properties in your community to turn that into home ownership opportunities. I did that work when I was on the city council. We can absolutely do it in more municipalities and really look at communities of color, for example, as a way to close that racial wealth gap. get assets into the hands of those residents. In addition to that, housing could be more at the forefront. As we protect folks to keep tenants in their homes, for example, that for me is building wealth. That is about economics. As we are pushing back on potential legal foreclosures, which is a major concern of folks, that is also creating economic stability for folks, especially our elders. So there's a whole host of ways. And then I'll end with this. I'm even looking to hire someone who will own that sort of portfolio of work around closing that gap and building economic prosperity. And I don't know that any AG office in the country is really driving that home. But discrimination, the way in which we praise houses, the value of homes, appraisal rates, significant discrimination largely against black residents or black families. The president and the federal government have looked at this. So there's a whole host of ways to really build wealth for folks. And it's about the framing.
Attorney General, you just talked about people not getting their wages. Give us an example. You don't have to use names, obviously, but just how it happens that you show up for work on Monday, payday comes on Friday, you don't get paid. Give us a story. How does this? Give us an example of how this happens.
So there's a couple. Well, one recently, a case we resolved, a local employer right here in Boston, where we got, usually it's a complaint that comes from either a worker who through a hotline or email or something like that. The hardworking investigators in the office go out, sometimes from the Fair Labor Division or other parts of the office, to go out and investigate, and they look into an employer. And in this particular case, this employer wasn't keeping adequate records, which usually is the case, isn't paying wages. So we'll look at, okay, where are the timesheets? Maybe you're not keeping those, or if you do have those, you're actually not paying folks according to what they worked. So there's a whole host of ways to investigate and get to the bottom of when an employer is not doing what they're required to do legally. And then, of course, we're fighting really hard to put money back in the pockets of those workers. But also, in addition to doing that, because everything I want to do in this economic stability space is the money should be going to the workers, to the consumer. But how do we also deter behavior? So there's all types of agreements we can come up with employers. Some may just need to be shut down. Others, I think sometimes if it's a smaller business, it's an honest mistake or they just didn't know what they were doing. We can educate them. We can do technical assistance, make the employee whole while at the same time making sure the employer going forward gets it right.
Let's see if we can squeeze in another one before the first break. Let's go to Brian calling from a car. You're on with Attorney General Andrea Campbell.
Calling
Welcome.
from where?
A car.
A car. Oh, a car.
Hey, Brian.
Be safe.
Yes.
What's up?
Hello there.
Hi.
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 Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you.
And happy to talk to the Attorney General. I have a somewhat complicated question it's related to health insurance. I'm disabled. I lost my leg to cancer about 15 years ago, and I'm good now, but I use a prosthesis and have gotten probably 3 times in the last 10 years, I've gotten a third-party company on behalf of my insurance company sending me a questionnaire about my leg, saying, asking a bunch of questions which lead me to believe they're looking for a way not to pay the claim because they want to know if it's a workers' comp claim or if it was due to an accident, like a car accident or something like that, not related to what they would have to pay. And I've answered those like 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years. And this past year, I decided I'm just going to ignore the questionnaire that they sent because it's pretty lengthy and takes a significant amount of time to fill out. And they already have this information. So I didn't fill it out last year, and that led to them pulling back a claim. I had a test done, ordered by my doctor.
Hey, Brian, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yes, you may.
If you have a question, you should ask it. If not, with all due respect to Attorney General, what we've done in prior situations like Brian's
I have someone here.
Is get the contact.
Yes.
And
We came prepared, and also I just want to acknowledge Lauren, who's here, who manages like all of the hotlines. So when you call the office, her team is on the front lines, not only making sure someone picks up, but that you get a response and your case is resolved. So just stay on the line and we'll get your contact, Brian. And when you circle back, please, don't be in a car. We might need some more information from you, but we'll follow up and make sure that we respond.
Brian, stay on hold. One of our producers will get the contact information and pass it along.
Thanks
and
for calling,
you for your
Brian.
first call. We appreciate it.
We're with Attorney General Andrea Campbell. She's going to be with us to the top of the hour. You can reach her at 877-301-8970. You can call or text. We'll get to as many as we possibly can. You're listening to Boston Public Radio.
Book sales declined last year, but not in the romance genre, and one Baltimore book club might help us understand why.
I was really raring to do a romance book club for the women who may feel nervous or made to feel ashamed of wanting to read this type of literature.
Breaking up with the stigma on romance novels on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Next time on The World, we're in southern Turkey. A family is living rough by the side of the road. One of the grown-ups tries to comfort a girl whose parents are missing and presumed dead.
Yemek veririz. Aç olmaz, aç olmaz, açık da olmaz ama
The adult says, I can't give her her mother, I can't give her her father. The toll on survivors of the earthquakes on the world.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're here for the inaugural visit of Andrea Campbell, the new Attorney General of Massachusetts.
On Valentine's Day.
For Ask the Attorney General. She'll be with us monthly. And by the way, if you want even more of her at the end of this hour, she's going to be with Callie on Basic Black on Friday night. Do not miss that. So you were just smiling during the break, and I assume you were smiling because you're with me and Marjorie, but it wasn't that. Why were you smiling?
No,
Andrea
Mr.
Campbell?
Red. So
Mr. Red was your teacher?
Yeah, so most folks know I went to 5 Boston public schools, and I always talk about it just how I had a high-quality public education, and Mr. Red was one of my teachers. So when I came in, I was like, hey, how are you doing?
Oh, my goodness.
Mr. Red asked the question on behalf of Greer during the Ask the Mayor. Let's hear it from Mr. Red, actually.
So he's like
That's
ducking
great.
down. I don't know why. You should be proud.
That's great.
So on a much more somber note, we get a lot of, this is a text from Steve in Plymouth. He wants to know how come the state police scufflaws are allowed to keep their pensions after they falsify their timesheets. This leaves the public with a distrust issue. Obviously, not just the state police that people are distrustful of. We have problems up at Springfield. The Department of Justice is looking into them involving a consent decree. Worcester, some cases involving excessive force. We had a gentleman call a couple of weeks ago, was a piece in the Globe actually, black guy been pulled over 70 times by the cops. We talked to Mayor Wu earlier today about problems on the Boston police force with police officers that have been, in one case, fired twice. They get reinstated by arbitration. The city has to pay these enormous civil suits to the people that they mistreated. In this case, one of them was the guy that's now the commissioner, Michael Cox. But you're the Attorney General, but where is your role in terms of policing in Massachusetts, with the state cops or the local cops?
It's significant, and most folks would think in the traditional way you think about an AG. One is, within the office itself, there is a state police unit. I have 2 here who are part of my detail.
Good guys, great guys
They're
over
great
there.
guys.
Great guys over there.
They are great guys, and they work really hard, and they're dedicated and passionate about service and about the jobs they do, and they don't just drive me around and protect me. They also have open cases, so they are investigating what's happening in our casinos. They are investigating everything related to the opioid crisis, the trafficking of fentanyl and everything else. All types of cases. A huge crim bureau, and the state police is housed within that bureau. Doing a lot to protect us, human trafficking, white collar crime, you name it. If anything, the unit is severely understaffed. And yet they show up every single day to work extra hours. So I want to give credit, because at the end of the day, when I used to be on the city council, I chaired the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. I would say at 2 a.m. when someone is harmed in my community, I'm not calling the mayor or a counselor, I'm calling 911 and the police and hoping someone shows up to respond appropriately and with the highest of integrity and standards of excellence. But we also know, while we have that conversation, that there are still flaws that exist in policing here in Massachusetts. And the office has been involved in some cases of abuse or misconduct by officers. In addition to that, obviously, misappropriation of funds or anything else that violates community trust should be dealt with. So I promised during the campaign, and this is something we're actively working on right now, to not only set up that gun enforcement unit, which is just as important as this other unit, which is the police accountability unit. So I am gearing up to have meetings with not only unions, police chiefs, and others to say, while we look at Tyree Nichols, and that happens outside of Massachusetts, here in Massachusetts, racial profiling, misappropriation of funds, abuse of power also happens here. And all those cases don't necessarily show up in a public space or where an article is written. But the last I checked, good officers want that dealt with too. And so if we establish this police accountability unit within the AG's office, my goal is to work with law enforcement to quickly root out those folks who abuse their power and make sure not only do they not get their jobs back, but in some instances that they go to jail. And I think sometimes that's difficult to get that level of justice, but it's important. And then I will just add, POST is a major tool that the AG's office will have to play a role in. This is the whole decertification process of an officer. I think there's a greater role the AG's office can play working with the Post Commission to make sure those
Tell
who
people
have
what that is. That's part of the police reform legislation.
That's exactly right. So if an officer has to go through a process of being certified, but if there are certain examples of misconduct or something else, they can be decertified, which bars them from working as a police officer or in law enforcement here in Massachusetts and maybe elsewhere too. And so this Post Commission is critical, but looking at it, we have to make sure it's resourced. We have to make sure that the AG's office has the tools to help the Post Commission execute on any decertifications and to make sure those who abuse their power, and we have examples of that, are never allowed to work in law enforcement ever again.
Let's go back to the calls. The Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell, is with us till the top of the hour. Judy in Andover, you're on next with Andrea Campbell. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I'd like to thank the Attorney General for coming to our Greater Andover Indivisible meeting back in October. It was great to meet her in person and to hear from her, and congratulations on her win.
Thank you.
But my question is, what can the Attorney General's office do to rein in the so-called crisis pregnancy centers that are giving out misinformation and disinformation to pregnant women that are fraudulently claiming themselves to be medical centers, although they have no clinical certifications whatsoever? I'll leave the question there.
Thank you, and thank you for the question and also for the support. And obviously, with Andover, I was on the phone with some folks, of course, in Andover, given what happened recently. So a lot of trauma in the community, but it's great to hear your voice a lot. And so when I talk about this reproductive justice unit that we are working on setting up, we just actually, if we didn't post it yesterday, it will be this week, job description to hire someone to start that unit and to build it out. And the hotline, of course, was a way for folks to come and ask questions. But on the crisis pregnancy centers, the office has been doing a lot. It issued an advisory even before I became AG, and to warn folks on these centers that put themselves out there as providing abortion or other critical health care services, but aren't actually doing that. Maybe even some data privacy concerns with respect to these centers. And so as we continue the work, the unit and others in the office will be tasked with looking at what other laws can we use to take on folks who are violating this advisory or in some way preying on consumers and not giving them the information they need. And I think there are several legal theories. You won't want to hear all those, but there are several legal theories that the office is already reviewing to be able to take it a step further. And I'm hopeful and optimistic that the lawyers in the office, but also this new unit, will be able to do that and couple it with all the other pieces as well.
You know, it's just staying on a police thing and a related matter. I think most people listening to the show have heard about Justin Root, who had a history of mental illness, was shot by a police officer outside Brigham and Women's. He then drove, I think, into Brookline and ultimately was killed by a police officer there. The Norfolk DA at an earlier time determined there was no basis for criminal charges being filed against any police officer. And just yesterday, the Suffolk County DA determined the same thing. Family members, both before yesterday and I believe yesterday, are saying they want you. They say Justin was actually a constituent of yours when you were a city councilor. They want you in the Attorney General's office to do an independent investigation. Are you open to that? Are you considering that?
We are in conversations with his sister. So I actually was in conversations with his sister when I was still on the city council. And we share in the fact that obviously this was her brother. I've lost a brother and felt like there was no accountability, no justice, because I never knew what happened and no one was ever held accountable for Andre's passing. And of course, that was in the context of the Department of Correction. This is different. And so we are actively in conversations to see what we can do.
Fair enough. Let's go to Christina in Taunton. You're on with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Hi, Attorney General Andrea Campbell. Thank you for taking my call. Can you hear me okay?
We can,
Yes.
perfectly.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. The reason I'm calling is I'm not sure if you're aware, but there has been a shortage of the ADA medication known as Adderall. And I'm just wondering if you're aware of it and if there's any work being done to, I guess, alleviate the shortage. I've been taking this medication for about 20 years, and to be honest, I wake up every morning thinking about it. Try and call various CVS's, to see if they have it. Everybody's out of stock. Nobody even wants to take their call anymore. I can't even imagine how parents of children with ADHD are dealing with this because you can't just take a medication like this for years and then just stop with nothing else to, no substitute. I'm sorry. I'm
No,
thinking
don't go
beyond
so
myself here because I know how it affects me, and I can't imagine being a parent of a child with ADHD.
So let's do this. Let's get your contact. So I would say do not hang up. Let's get your contact. We will follow up today to talk in more detail about this, which is similar to the Tylenol shortage and other, breastfeeding formula and other things that have come up. And I think from a policy stance, so I think there's some things the office can do. It also connects, I think, to the price gouging conversation that's also come up. So let's get your contact information. I appreciate you calling in. I appreciate your vulnerability, your advocacy for yourself, but also other families. And we'll follow up today.
Christina, don't hang up. We'll get your number and we'll pass it on immediately to the Attorney General's colleagues. Thank you for your call.
Attorney General James from Boston wants to know about progress being made with Corey reform. He says that even people with not guilty or dismissed charges still get jobs denied, and he's it's difficult for him to get clean because he's having trouble getting a job.
Yep, that's a major issue. And I want to give credit, whether it's Greater Boston Legal Services, ACLU, or other advocates who still do know your rights. When I used to be on the board for the Mass Black Lawyer Association, they did know your rights, so people knew exactly what their rights were. And sometimes it can be a little complicated given your individual case or relationship with an employer as a candidate. And so there is more to do in that space. And so when I mentioned the Police Accountability Unit earlier, I want to take a step back. The office is not just going out to focus on government accountability or abuse of power or public corruption in the context of just police officers. This shows up in different contexts. And so we are actually in the process of creating what we're calling an internal working group on government accountability. Looking at how we set up that police accountability unit, looking at how we set up the gun enforcement unit, but also looking at what we can do in the context of criminal legal reform. That's a big issue. Corey is one issue under criminal legal reform where an AG's office can absolutely show up boldly and fiercely, just like we call employers in the context of wage theft. The same can be true for Corey, but also showing up, just like I said to the folks housed at MCI Norfolk, showing up at the State House on legislation to help folks in terms of reentry, showing up in the context of other issues to address the racial disparities that exist, not only in before you're incarcerated, but also when you get out, and making sure that folks are not discriminated against.
Grant, I'm sorry.
From Belmont. Thank you for calling, Grant.
Hi, Grant.
Hi, Grant.
Thank you, Jim and Hi, thank you, Jim and Marjorie. Madam Attorney General, in recent weeks, the state's Cannabis Control Commission announced that they referred at least one case to your office for parallel investigation. Coupled with the news we've heard that the industry is facing Russian oligarch financing and the death of employees, do you support creating an independent OIG unit to oversee the CCC? Thank you.
Thanks, Grant.
Thank you for the question. I can't respond yes or no just yet because I think we have to look into it more. You hear about issues in terms of, and I know right now the office is looking into many investigations into folks who are setting up shop here who may not even be from this country, trying to take advantage of these economic opportunities, which we know, if done right, could really be an opportunity to close the racial wealth gap. And so we'll look into it more, and I'm sure I'll have a response in more detail on it later.
But
I will add, since it's oversight, and I remember being on the council in proposed Office of Inspector General for the city of Boston, and some folks were against it. I was in favor of it because I thought, yes, we have a state inspector general who can look at a whole bunch of things, and an auditor and others, but sometimes at the municipal level, it's not a bad idea. So clearly not against oversight if it is for, because there's a lack of human capital to do it at a local level or within a particular agency, or there's bias or something else that may exist.
I'm going to get this mostly right, but maybe not 100%. When you called in on election day, as virtually all the candidates did, one of us asked you a question about the significance of, should you win, which you did, being not just the first black woman attorney general, but the first black woman constitutional officer, statewide office holder. And you said something incredible to me, like, you're smiling. So, frankly, I never thought of it until a reporter mentioned it to me the other day. I accept that as truthful. So I assume
yes,
you've had
it's truthful.
I'm
I don't
sure
lie.
it is. I know you don't. I assume you've had time to think about it. This is a long time coming. You're nodding in agreement. Yeah. Tell us what your thoughts are now that you are the Attorney General.
Yes, I have had time to think about what it means to be the first black woman Attorney General in Massachusetts, the first woman of color to win statewide office in Massachusetts. And I take that responsibility very seriously. I think that maybe the first time it really hit me, this was before the inauguration. The inauguration, of course, it hits you. But before then, I had gone into the office as AG-elect to meet with the attorneys and the staff and everyone who works there to say hello, to introduce myself, and this is when Maura was still there. And you walk in, and you see Maura's picture, which was in color. You see Martha, which was black and white, and all the other pictures before it. And there was some on the left, maybe the older gentlemen, of all mainly white men. Then you walk further down, and you can see former Senator Brooke. That's when it hit me. Now my photo is up. It is a very beautiful photo. And I have to say this because people are like, that photo is great. And the photographer did a wonderful job. And of course, it was like no hair out of place. It was all perfect. But because it's historic. And so that's when it really hit me, the magnitude of what it means and what it means to be present in the room. And we say representation matters. The presence in the room matters. As I looked at the students this morning at my son's school, and I talked about, and his teacher talked about the first black woman, you see the little black girls light up. They didn't say anything, but you could see it in their eyes. And you see it with everybody else. And I know I'm here because Massachusetts residents put me here as far as Berkshire County. And I will say pockets of the state that we view or deem to be red, where people are like, you really shouldn't show up there. I showed up anyway. Because I said, do Massachusetts residents live there? They do. Okay, I don't care which way they're leaning. They live there, I'm going to engage. And many of those parts of the state that I guess we had no business winning, we did. And so I give the credit to the voters. And I think going forward, you're seeing, I think, understanding from constituents and voters that who you elect matters, but most importantly, a desire to have elected and political leadership in this political industry represent the people we serve and represent their stories. And so for me, this work will always be really fighting for those folks that feel left out and left behind, unseen, unheard, and doing it with a sense of urgency, compassion, and empathy. So do I feel it now? Yes. And when I engage with AGs all across the country, because right now there are only 2 elected black women AGs, Tish James in New York, me, and before that there was only Kamala Harris, who was the AG in New York. It matters. And it still matters at the national level. And of course, given how progressive we are in many ways in Massachusetts when it comes to our laws, it really matters. And so thank you to Massachusetts, and thank you to our residents for putting me here to have the best job in the world. And I told Maura, but I would say it to Biden if I saw him, I have the best job in government.
Okay, we have a couple of text messages for you, Attorney General. First of all,
a couple of seconds.
Your neighbor Becky is coming by with Hershey bars to celebrate your crushing it
wait,
here.
who?
And your neighbor Becky.
Oh, yeah, she drops off chocolate.
Yeah, she's got the Hershey bars.
Okay, happy Valentine's Day.
John from Rhode Island, he's a not so recent law school grad. He says he's inspired by you. He wants to know, how does he become an awesome public law figure like yourself, A.G. Campbell?
Well, do well in law school, graduate, and then go into public service. And there are a whole host of jobs and opportunities, including interning in various offices. But don't give up on public service. It can be hard because student debt is real, but we need good lawyers and we need good folks going into government.
Well,
we want to thank you
very much.
so much for being
Thank you
by the
very
way,
much for being here.
Again, Andrea Campbell will be on Basic Black Friday night at 7:30 on GBH2, and she'll be back with us next month. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you so
Valentine's Day, everyone.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
We, of course, have been talking to Andrea Campbell. She is the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. She's going to be with us monthly. Thanks a lot for tuning in today to Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we'll be speaking with a national security expert, Juliet Kayyem. Tracy Kidder and Dr. Jim O'Connell are going to be here to talk about their book, Kidder's book, Rough Sleepers, which traces Jim O'Connell's work with people who sleep on the streets of Boston. He's been doing that for, I think, 40 years. Executive Arts Editor from GBH, Jared Bowen, Naturalist, Cy Montgomery. We want to thank our new member of our team here for joining our team, Nicole Garcia. Thank you very much for doing such a great job your first day here. Also want to thank Zoe Matthews, Kenrick Mercado, John McClaw Parker, Brian Bell, Jenny Bologna, the BPL team, Annie Schreffler, Evelyn Brito, Angelica Marrero, and Steve Baracci. I am Marjorie Egan.
I am Jim Browdy.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you
And
can
thank
tune
you
in
for
again
coming,
tomorrow.
everybody.
Thank you for coming down to the Boston Public Library. Have a great day.
It's Jim and Marjorie on Boston Public Radio right here on GBH. You know, most of the money we spend to bring you this program comes from listener support. And I'm here to ask you to take a few minutes right now, give as generously as you're able. We're encouraging you to consider signing up as a monthly sustainer at gbhnews.org or call us at 888-897-9424. Good afternoon, I'm Mark Cohen, and I'm joined by Jack Callahan.
Okay, we're looking for 15 people to give in the next 9 minutes. Please give whatever you can to help keep the news source that you trust on your radio by giving now. 15 contributions. We brought you this hour uninterrupted as we did the 11 o'clock hour with the conversation with the mayor, but that does not change our goals and our need for the dollars. We knew that our members would step up now and make that gift to support Boston Public Radio. Please call 888-897-9424 or donate online at gbhnews.org.
And when you support GBH at $10 a month, you'll have an opportunity to choose an annual online subscription to either the Washington Post or the New York Times. It's our way of saying thanks. This offer is just for today. It goes away at 7 o'clock. You know the Washington Post and the New York Times, 2 news sources that you trust and rely on. And so now you get the Post or the Times with a single contribution to GBH. It's a digital subscription. It allows unlimited, anytime, anywhere access to all content across all your devices. You could read as much as you like, whenever you like. So support GBH by signing up as a sustaining member. Again, $10 a month or a one-time gift of $120 all at once. Ask for either your choice, the Washington Post or the New York Times when you do. 888-897-9424 online at gbhnews.org.
As careful and as frugal as we are with our budget, our member dollars that bring us Boston Public Radio,